I know it's on. Look, it's on. It's doing the thing.
Test.
One of these, I mean, that's definitely giving us sound.
Okay.
Right,
So
we
wait,
definitely have it there. Can you hear us when this particular app is open? Because if that's the case, I came back for a few seconds. Well, can I be heard now?
that works.
That works. That's weird. That makes no sense at all. Well, it actually might make a bit of sense because the piece of software that we're using, GoXLR, to make the sound is no longer supported because the company died. So it's possible that an update's needed to make it work properly. But we can hear, but we're low. Okay, so...
Where are you gonna go, Andy?
Yeah, I'm not going to go anywhere on that one. Let's see if I can do anything over on this side before we dive into the stream properly.
Oh yeah, look, we're only.
Oh yeah, look at that. That's terrible.
What? That's so strange.
That is really strange. Mic volume's up. Nothing else is on. There's little else I can do other than maybe restart the stream and see if that fixes it. I mean, it's looking clean and sound loud there, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it might be worth just doing a quick restart. Switch off that in case the
I would turn off everything but the stream first. So I would shut down like GoXLR and everything
totally.
first. And
So let's you. So.
Huh. Oh, what the fuck? Why was it doing that?
No idea. But there's the issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should be good now. Hopefully, sound is back.
What the fuck?
I have no. What was that?
Maybe you're watching the slider on the GoXLR just go.
Oh, that's crazy. Well, hello and welcome to a weird start for our show today, where we are going to be discussing. We're not going to be discussing Alone, apparently, because somebody has just arrived.
Hi.
Hello there, Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay.
Oh no, I don't know if I've got the sound set up to hear you. Well, we did just sort it so that I can.
Hi, can you hear me?
We are flying by the seat.
We are really doing well today. Actually, no, that's on, so it should be okay. Can you say something, Lindsay, so we can check if we can hear you?
I would have gone to my studio.
No,
but
I can't hear. You can all hear her. This is the best tech setup we have ever had to get ourselves going today. So Lindsay can soliloquize for a moment while we figure out
for the stream on my phone.
I would have been in the stream room.
Oh, this is freaking hilarious.
my
Right, is the sound on down there? Yes, it is. Sound on over here? Yes, it is. Oh,
I can't
this is
soliloquize
possibly the
'cause he's
funniest start
talking
to any
over
stream
me.
ever. Oh.
Y'all missed it when we sat down and he pulls the green screen down. We're talking, all of a sudden I see a spider this big just crawling its way up Andy's towards his face. I'm like, oh shit!
It was actually hilarious.
Oh, it's Manfred!
It is indeed. He's coming in to say hello.
it's why I'm not in the stream
We don't know
room.
that we're talking over Lindsay because we can't hear her at the moment.
Hold on.
We have literally no idea what she's saying. We're trying to sort out the sound at this side as to why we can't hear it. Something's gone weird. Because that shouldn't have happened either. Right, so let's, while Lindsay's, Lindsay's disappeared too now.
Fun.
Yeah, we've got sound there. I can hear the sound.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, now there are two Lindsays.
We've now got two.
Oh, no.
Okay, this is the best stream ever. So that suggests that there's a sound audio issue on this side, which means that this needs to change. Means if I do
I bet that'll fix it.
that should fix it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes!
Yes! We can hear you!
I'm not in the stream room because the wee guy came and fell asleep on me, but now I'm talking, he's really confused.
Okay, so let's get rid of this extra Lindsay that apparently has popped up on screen. Don't think we need that one. There we go. Yeah, we can hear you nicely, and hopefully there might be a touch of a slight echo. Can you speak again just to see if it goes? Because we're having to put it
Is
out.
there still an echo?
Okay, if anyone can confirm whether that was coming through, apologies if there's a bit of an echo. We're just going to have to live with that.
I was going to say, there is, just deal with it. You're adults.
Yeah. We're cool. So let's finally get started. There's a slight echo with Lindsay because we've got her actually playing out loud so we can both hear her at this side because we don't have our headphones on here. So she's popping out. But hopefully if I put up the... in fact, if I put the audio bit on here and go echo cancellation...
Oh, that might help. Yeah.
That might help. And hopefully there will be no echo after this.
They said it was tiny anyway.
Yeah,
Is there an echo now?
Sage, I hope you didn't get whatever I had.
Oh, yeah, that would be rubbish because, yeah, it wasn't feeling
It
very
was
well.
short, though. If it was what you got for me, it was quick.
Cool. So it looks like the echo is gone. And if it hasn't gone, well, tough. And finally, sitting at the 6-minute 25-second mark, we say, welcome.
Yeah. Amidst spiders and tech difficulties and... Jesus.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So what we have today is a discussion about what it was like coming on LAWhammer for a certain individual.
Yeah.
What it was like building the character, what it was like doing the Grey Wizards, and indeed anything else that you might ask along the way. It's a bit of a ask us anything as we go as well. So if you've got any questions about anything, feel free to just fire them down into the comments and we will eventually get to them. And we also have a Lindsay who can say hi concerning what it was like having someone infiltrate her safe space and come along and do things like say, wait a minute, you guys are weird and why are you doing all these things and are you really grown-ups?
Yeah, it's also you may notice my voice is so much not shit, which is great. Existence is no longer suffering. It was for a little bit there. But
for those of you that caught us on Sunday for Lorebeard, you'll know that poor old Sotek's voice was more like this. It was like, oh, hello, I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm Sotek.
I was really leaning into the Scottish aspect of life.
I'm sitting here all croaky. So yeah, his voice was pretty poor, and now he's sounding so much better. We were up at the castle today, having a good wander around Edinburgh Castle, up and down the Royal Mile, having a bit of fun, looking at the ridiculous number of layers that the various buildings have got. Good times were had.
Yeah, saw the crown jewels, saw the two swords, the modern one, which was kind of and the older one, which was like, that's much cooler.
Turns out is the flip.
Oh, it's the flip.
One.
Oh,
Yeah,
the newer one
was much
improved.
cooler. Yeah, the old one was a little bit, it's got little dolphins on it. The newer one's like cool and spiky and thistly and awesome and a big, huge purple scabbard with all kinds of Celtic knotwork running across it. Pretty awesome.
Oh, pull that up.
Which one?
That one.
That one? Hey!
Now that Lindsay is here, I just gotta say I finally played my Dark Deeds. It was actually one of the coolest board games I have ever played.
Oh, RTS Gamer, thanks so much for saying
Hey, and that's
so.
from RTS Gamer. That's a legit authority figure right there.
Oh, well, if that's the case, RTS Gamer, legit authority figure. Go tell your friends. Let's see if we can get another 2,000 copies out there because holy crap, we could really do with selling another 2,000 just so that we can pay Mark Gibbons and Andy Chambers yet more money. So that would be lovely. And yeah, thanks very much for saying so. We've really enjoyed it. Also, like Lord Chris, Chris, pardon me. It was nice that Sadie came across Atlantic to chase Sotek.
What? Did she?
Partly so.
I didn't realize. Okay. Oh, dog. Karnak.
Oh, right. It took us a while. Yeah, we weren't quite sure what we were getting at there, but now it makes much more sense.
Thankfully,
my
dog only has one head, because if she had three, feeding her would probably be a much more expensive whole fucking thing.
Yeah, totally.
She costs a lot to feed.
Indeed. Tech 27, was the tech issue just a Skaven scheme? Most things are. For those of you that caught the episode that we did last Friday, you can watch it right now as well, but not right now because obviously we're streaming. But you can watch it right now over on this channel, LAWhammer, over on YouTube. And you can see Sotek's episode 62 appearance where he had what I think was a really nice beginning, middle, and end story that ran all the way through the episode by itself. And we're going to be discussing what it was like. But before we do that, I'm going to dive over to Lindsay and say, what was it like having some Sotek come aboard and really ruin our day?
I really enjoyed it. So especially so Lindsay really enjoyed it because I like Sotek. He's a great guy. Yay! Yeah. Alan Menowith, I think, found it like really great to have another grown-up on the team. And
so for those of you that don't know, Alan Menowith is the elf character that Lindsay plays. and she's often shaking her fist at what she perceives as the kids being, well, kids, because they're all playing very young characters. And most of those characters don't take particularly well when things don't go exactly the way they want it to go. And sometimes Alamenowite's on the edge going, please don't say anything that will upset someone else. Please don't. And they inevitably then do, which is always fun.
Grimm was really intense, and Alamenowite really appreciated that because he was like intense. He had a thing to do. He had a time limit to do it in, and things were really important. And that's how she rolls. Like, she's really intense and is on a time limit, and things are really important. So yeah.
Cool. So apparently we're very loud in comparison to others. Has that made a difference? I've adjusted it very slightly at this end. If someone can confirm one with the other, or are we still
Manfred
super loud?
Super loud. Every time you
Manfred
talk,
thinks we're super loud. Yeah, totally. As we're doing that, let's bring up Dynoman95. I've noticed in Lorebeard you often mention Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1st, 2nd, and 4th edition, but not 3rd. Is this purely because of less experience with it, or some other issue? Some other issue. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd edition used a completely different system to 1st, 2nd, and 4th, which for all they're all a bit different from each other. They're all basically the same game, just reiterated.
It was a dice pool system, right?
Yes, dice pool system using special dice. If you've ever played the Star Wars game from FFG, it was the precursor to the Star Wars game and uses a very simple set of rules to that game. It also uses cards all over the place. But in terms of the background, it didn't add a great deal because as an addition, what it basically did was it just reiterated everything that came before. It just took from the existing battle game. It had some really good adventures. It had some interesting additions, like a Dreadfleet edition, which was really, yeah, it's just a little pack of cards, really. Not very much to it, but they had a little extra for Dreadfleet because Games Workshop at that time was selling Dreadfleet, and they went, "Hey, roleplay game, go make Dreadfleet." So they were like, "Okay, let's do that then." And it happened. But 3rd edition hasn't, in the greater scheme of things, done much that we, so far at least, have required to draw upon. Now, do we have it? Oh, hell yeah. I own every single book that 3rd edition has to offer. We've got them in our, in fact, no, it's not the room that Lindsay's in. It's in the next room over to the room that Lindsay's in. We've got them all and I've read them all. So yeah, it's just a different game. And in terms of background, it never added quite as much.
I will say, if you pick up like the Uberstrike adventure books, you'll tend to find a lot of them are 3rd ed adventures that have been rejigged for 4th. And that's kind of all the legacy it's left behind.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame actually, because when we were first setting up Uberstrike for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition, the idea was that we were setting up the setup for what happened in 3rd edition. So what we were doing is we were using the stuff in 3rd edition as inspiration for what came before. How did all the things that happened in 3rd edition get set up by the story beforehand? And then I set it all up. We got it all going. I left. And then they just took all the adventures from 3rd edition, the ones we were setting up, and said, no, they actually took place 10 years earlier.
The joys. the joys.
Now, I'll admit I was also slightly guilty of that, but it wasn't my choice because the Lord of Ubersreich, the last part of Rough Nights and Hard Days that sits at the back, was actually originally a 3rd ed adventure as well. But that adventure was already commissioned when I came on as producer, and I put a hard line at that point saying it's the only one that's going to do that, and we changed the adventure enough that it could be replicated again at a later date if we wish to do so. But broadly speaking, 3rd edition is there. It adds absolutely tons, but as an addition in terms of its rules, large swathes of the Warhammer community just don't like it because it was so different to what came before. I thought it did a lot that was good. I know that's a controversial point for many of you out there who know the game, but I thought it brought a lot to the table that's worth at least considering. And when we were designing 4th edition, for all I was pretty much banned from using anything from 3rd. And I do mean that, blanket ban. You can't use this stuff. There's still some bits of influence that made its way through to the 4th edition from all of that. So yeah. Good stuff.
I will say, Pie Guy, there are a lot of books and a lot of games. It's you think you're gonna go, that's a lot, and you go, no, there's a lot. it's. I'm very impressed, to be honest. It's very, very cool how much they have.
It's worth also noting this is us post-flood, having lost freaking tons of our games. But yeah, we do have a lot of them. Yes, the green one there. No. Yeah, cool. You want to go?
Sotek survives. I do. Did raise the dead? Yeah, it's like what was the guy that tried to make Conrad tried to make Emperor by zombie puppet?
Oh yeah, that's the way to do it. Isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what's happened. Sotek has, in fact, we have to say, died. It's a horrible thing to admit.
Yeah, terrible.
we brought him back. It was that easy. We just went from Croaky Sotek. I don't know why he goes weird in that sort of accent, but he does. Oh, I'm Croaky Sotek.
Yeah, I sounded exactly like that.
Exactly like that. There's no Texan in the slightest.
Yeah, it's. I'm very glad. I'm feeling much better.
Amadeus Arkham, I love how this infiltration under the Gracier's eyes that almost killed 3 of them during, under Minheim, happens the very same day as the bloody wedding. The Jaegers can't catch a break. So for those of you who haven't watched it, there was a big, nasty, bloody wedding, assassinations all over the place. And our PCs went running down under the city with the character that Sotek was playing, who was Grimm. Or Magister Grimm of the Grey Order.
Alphonse Grimm.
Alphonse Grimm, indeed. On that, if you would like to look at the card sheet for those of you who are fans of actual rules, I will quickly post it over in the Grimm Tales with Sotek thread. That's it now posted. I will also post it into the chat. So if you want to look at his character sheets and have any questions concerning that, you absolutely can do so, because that was quite a build-up of a character, and it took a little bit longer to build than I would have preferred. But that's because I had to build an entire Grey Wizard set of rules, an entire Grey Wizard set of spells, most of which are kind of finished. And yeah, it was really a pretty big day for the Jaegers, because they were going through assassinations, getting pulled over one another, going in, doing stuff, going up there, going down, and yeah, meeting, of course, lovely Grimm along the way.
Now, I will say that getting to come in and play was, well, besides being like a massive honor and a huge bucket list item done for me, of that, it really felt like stepping into... Andy's a bastard is why that's there. Of that, Andy just decided to put Alphonse Grimm from Sterling just to be a dick. Just to be a dick.
Well, there were so many people saying, I hate Sterling, and Sotek said in one of his other conversations with me, you know what, I actually quite like Sterling. So I was like, well, let's see then. Sterling it is.
No wonder he was so desperate to get to alter. He should have just stayed a country boy in Sterling. He should have just stayed there. But it was a very, very good time. It was a lot more just getting to step into hanging with like an established group of friends, which was really, really fun, and just being able to made it easy to meld into. You know, it wasn't the I think when you kind of watch, it can almost, you wonder, are they really friends, or is it more just kind of like a group of professionals or whatever? No, it really just felt like coming in and enjoying like a really nice, friendly weekly group that just happens to be streamed.
Professionals. As you can tell from the beginning of this stream. Always professional.
though it was very, very amusing, almost killing Ed right before the stream started with the ghost pepper that no one else was that bothered by.
So some ghost pepper. What was it?
Jerky.
Ghost pepper jerky was brought over by Sotek. And Ed had some, and he was like, "Ooh, it's so hot." And Lindsay and I had it after, and we were like,
it's like fine. I thought must have got like a really mild bit because of Ed's reaction. So I had like 5 more bits just to be sure that it was like, and it was still fine.
Totally true. Right. So what do we have? There. I was losing track of where we were.
It's not like we did it 2 days ago.
Yeah, totally. Dynamite noticing the shelves behind Lindsay and potentially to add to the pile, I highly recommend Kingsburg, good game. Port Royal, not played that yet. Raccoon Tycoon, not played that either. And Tiny Towns, good game. So good recommendations all around there. Mr. Vorn, thank you so much as he drops in to treat us to a Bugman's.
So Vorn was gonna so Vorn, thank you.
Thanks.
Say
maybe.
So unfortunately we got news that Bugman's is under renovation.
So we are fully intending on going to Bugman's, and we can't because Bugman's is blooming shut. So Bugman's down in Nottingham, which we very much intended to have a quick visit of. Yeah, we can't. It's not a thing we can do.
They're like, oh, we've got a little like part out front. It's like a little stall, but it's it's not the same. It's like, great, of course. When I come over here. So anyway, we'll be popping over there anyway. But because I still want to see Warhammer World, but yeah, Bugman's is apparently Get Guzzler has passed through recently. Much a shame.
Yeah, quite. Just to bring up a question here from EG Cruising. EJ cruising. I was like EG.
He doesn't even have 100 in channeling.
No, he doesn't. And not all do. Now, as I recall, if I bring up the card sheets, I'm going to bring it up here. So I've already posted the link. If you haven't got the link, you can get it over on our Discord. I posted up earlier in the chat if you want to scroll up. It's
I'm
definitely
going to
posted.
go. I'm playing Expedition 33. It's been
I totally
to
understand.
stay away from it for this long already. And I don't want to see a character sheet because that's just behind the mystery, and I'm
understandable.
Well, thanks for coming in, Lindsay.
Totally fun. Thank you. He's got 21 advances in channeling Ulgu. He is not the strongest Ulgu channeler that there is. And he's only been working on his channeling for, well, it's been almost a decade, but he's been apprenticed in the Grey Order. And the Grey Order in particular is not necessarily known for its teaching, but it is known for its apprentices needing to be good at what they're doing. And he spent, of that 10 years where he was learning, about 7 of them apprenticed and then moved up swiftly through the order because he has the natural spark allowing him to do battle magic. So he is a classic example of someone who's been pushed through careers quickly, meaning he's got a big, broad array of capability, but doesn't have that strong pressure on one skill over another. He's got a lot of space to go if he had survived. He has spent much, much more of his time doing other business rather than just channeling grey spells.
Yeah, you'll notice if you look through it, he's got some surprising generalist spells. He's very strong in areas you might expect a wizard to be kind of weak in. Of that, like his social abilities, a lot of his combat abilities are very high.
Yeah, 100%. It's also worth noting, just for a quick pie guy there. Pie guy is someone who's never played Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. I have no idea what I'm looking at. And understandable. Let me give you a quick rundown so at least you get a bit of an idea. There's a bunch of numbers all over this sheet. And the ones you want to look at are the ones in blue. The ones in blue are the final numbers that he rolls tests on. And they're percentage numbers. So if you roll a percentile dice, which will go from 1 to 100, it'll give you an idea of whether they pass or fail. So, for example, if I go over to his cool is 82, which means 82% of the time he passes and 18% of the time he fails. It's a quick way of understanding the different numbers that are there. And some of the skills he's got little bonuses on as well, like +3 or whatever at the side. You don't really need to understand what they mean. Broadly speaking, attributes, anything above 50 is pretty damn decent. Anything below 30 is not good at all. Anything well above 50, which I think he only has on one, which is initiative, as I recall. Yes, it is. Initiative 67. He is sharp. Is very high. And one last thing, what do those numbers mean at the top? Weapon skill, bliss skill, strength, toughness, initiative. This is for the attributes in the attributes box. Strength, toughness, initiative, agility, dexterity, intelligence, willpower, fellowship. I'm not going to say any more than that. If you want to know more, just go read the bloody book. Because that's what Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is out there for. So hopefully that at least gives you a little bit of an idea there.
Yeah, and if you have any specific questions about like history of the character or what things that he did during the session, feel free to pop those around. We'll just kind of like look out for those.
Yeah, totally.
But we've got some more of the starred ones we need to do as well.
Where are we? Yeah, you can find it. Yeah, that'll be much easier. I'm just going to get myself a quick drink while you're doing that.
Character developed Grimm's backstory before the college. I'm very curious about his Hustlers plus BOD previous career.
Okay, so there's 2 parts to answer on this. The first one is that the initial career idea, the initial character idea, was Sotek's, 100%. We had a discussion some time ago about different character types.
About 2-3 months?
Yeah, totally. And he built a loose, I think this character would be cool suggestion. And he didn't build it in as a grey wizard. He built it in as a college wizard with a bunch of suggestions for different colleges it could be, none of which were grey.
Yeah, but the original idea was that, well, there's been so many grey wizards in LAWhammer. I feel like they've been overdone, so I'll suggest something different.
So we went with a grey. And given where we were in the story, the character fit in really well.
Grey Wizard.
And Grey Wizard was the correct choice. So if you've watched the episode, you'll completely understand why, because loosely the person who introduces him is also a Grey Wizard, and they have a strong connection. So he built that character without any real idea for what its background might be, other than a whole bunch of cool story ideas that he'd offered, including a certain big puppy.
Which we'll talk about that.
Yeah, indeed. We will talk about that. And then on my side, I was like, now I'm going to wend it in with what we have. And the Bod angle, where he came from the streets of Vertbad over in Stirland, was
a rough and tough country city.
Building his rough and tough background, and also his very ill-educated background. A lot of his time as an apprentice has been taking away much of those rough edges. One of the reasons why he has broad skills rather than deep skills, because he has been spending a lot of his time just learning how to be what a grey wizard is, because he wasn't that when he was taken into the college. And a lot of what he was had to be untaught before he could be then retaught how to be the best sort of grey. One of the reasons why none of his skills are particularly high, but pretty much everything that he does, he's very decently capable at.
Yeah, one with Hustler and Bod having very much kind of, imagining a kind of a street urchin type figure. Because the Greys, usually they try and grab them quite young. Compared to, especially compared to a lot of the other colleges.
Yeah, totally. They normally prefer you to be a teenager at the oldest. They legally 25 or under, but normally they would much prefer you were a teenager, because the older you are, the more fixed in your ways you will become. You've got enough experience to know what you think is right and what you think is wrong, where the Grey College has a very different view as to what they think is right and what they think is wrong.
Hobbit, I don't think it's very spoilerish at all, other than like a couple of minor, other than like the episode right before it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I actually heavily recommend episode 62 if you've never watched it before, or if you're like really far behind, you kind of want to get an idea of where things are going. Because there are so many little hints dropped about things that have happened where I, as Grimm, get to do a what? Like, what are you talking about? What the fuck? Which can hopefully, whenever you see Grimm have that kind of reaction, that hopefully can put how weird this party is and how much shit they've done that, frankly, they should not be talking about around people. But each of those were major.
Birdie.
Yeah, Birdie. Which all of those were very major highlights from either some of the solo streams or some of the big party streams. So those all serve as really good. Those are big moments from some point in the past, which I think is what makes it good. It's almost like there's a bunch of what you can almost think of as like adventure hooks, but like episode hooks.
Yeah, almost. Because there's a host of small details dropped throughout the course of the episode that hint to what came before. A couple of big ones, particularly for episode 61 and episode 60, because they've just happened and they're fresh in everybody's minds.
I don't think it's that spoilerish.
Yeah, it's not really. I wouldn't worry too much. If you're someone who doesn't like spoilers, if you're like me, you're always going to have an issue regardless. But if you're someone who doesn't care too much about spoilers and you just want to have a bit of fun with an episode, just dive in.
What I will say is, if you're on like episode 15 or 20, you've got so fucking long to go before any of those spoilers become remotely relevant.
By the time you'll get there, you'll have forgotten
Yeah.
it. I don't want to think about how many hours worth of content that we have online, because there's a lot.
It's a lot. I'm as Sotek, if for whatever reason Grant has survived and escaped, which he didn't, but he definitely didn't. But he definitely didn't. Had survived and escaped with the party. Presuming you could play him again, what would you have expected to do after you got back to the surface?
Question.
Yeah. I think if he had escaped with the party, honestly, probably the biggest thing for him. You know what? They wouldn't have liked it, but I think the first thing he would have done is he would have wanted them. He would have wanted Emmanuel to arrest them immediately, to make sure they are what they say they are and are not, if they are, not the biggest threat to the empire that he has seen in his entire life. Because a lot of the stuff that Birdie said made him realize how interwoven they are into everything going on. And because of the situation they were in, he didn't have the luxury of building trust. So once he got to the top, he would want to have trust with them, but that would mean they would need to be put through the ringer by the Grey College standards, which would probably be a very unpleasant experience.
Yeah, Grey College has got very high standards, very high standards indeed. One of the big mistakes of particularly people who are just coming into the setting for the first time thinking about playing a Grey Wizard is thinking that they're trickster wizards. They can't be trusted. They'll do whatever the heck they want. Nah, that's the face that they put on to allow them to do the real work that they do. because they are proper servants of the Empire, and sometimes, very appropriately enough, grim figures who have to abandon their entire lives, who have to abandon what it is to have a sense of self, their own pride, their own character for the Empire, to fulfill their roles, not just within the articles of magic, which are already relatively tight, but within the Grey Order's own set of orders that they lay down, which are a far higher standard, because the type of magic that they use is open to, well, significantly open to being abused. It's a type of magic that if it is given to someone who doesn't have the right framework of mental processes in place to ensure that they don't abuse their position, they can, and they very well may. And if they did, it's trouble time. It's not like, hey, that fire wizard over there, you know, if he goes a bit wrong, he's going to kill people. It's super, super obvious, because that fire wizard over there is throwing fireballs and everything's going a bit weird. And he's a bad guy now. We chase him down. Much harder to trace someone who's throwing mind holes around, who's making you forget that they're even there, or who is changing motivations in other people's minds. Not by, and it's important here, they're not using spells to change minds. They're spinning illusions that makes you think something else is real. And that is potentially awful. And in the hands of, say, for example, let's just lay out a psychopath. Bad.
Yeah.
In fact, think of any criminal that you want and the amount of benefits that they can gain from grey magic. The classic teenage question, well, what superpower do you want? Invisibility. Yeah, greys have got that. And it is a high standard in the college to be allowed to be free, to be allowed to go out into the Empire, to use this magic without supervision directly over you, which means that you have to pass significant standards and checks, which he's been through. That party clearly hadn't.
Yeah, so like just off the top of his head, the big things that he would have needed, that he would have felt would need to be, like he would talk to Emmanuel and say, we need to investigate these specific aspects. He would say, where is that elf from? Because she is seemingly either in love or very, very close with who was about to be married to the Emperor. And I don't know if that's genuine or if the elves are trying to manipulate the Empire. We need to figure out where the hell she's from. I don't know what's going on with this Gerhardt guy, but I know he's not the only Gerhardt. And he's paying weirdly close attention when I'm doing things. And I don't know what's up with him, but we need to isolate and talk to him because he likes to talk. This birdie girl, just get her something she wants to drink and just have a casual chat. She'll tell us everything we need to know.
Everything.
Yeah. That bright wizard, who the hell is his master and what is his deal? Because he seems the most normal in a sense for what I would expect, but he's traveling with a group of weirdos. The princess, can't do nothing to her, and I don't know what her deal is and why she's so involved in other countries' affairs, but she seems okay. And with everything I have just, well, actually, no, because he saw the miracle. Yeah. So he would have been like, holy shit. If we have any connections to the Ronaldins, who the hell is this girl? Like, I don't care about the princess shit. Who is she? And the father, he would have felt very much the same. Of like, these guys are not, these are movers and shakers determining the future, and we're just letting them fucking walk around like a bunch of adventuring goofballs? Who the hell are these people? So it's very good he did not come back with them.
Yeah, and if you haven't watched the episode, do so. The end was pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah.
It was pretty fucking awesome. Do we have any more comments? I said, yeah. You do that. No, I'll just sit back here.
I'll back
and be old.
Bunkman's Close is going to the fucking book. Yeah, it is. It is in my personal book.
Yeah, it's going in my book.
If someone has the spark of magic, how are they assigned to a particular college? Is it possible for someone to start training in one lore and then they realize they're better suited to a different one?
So this is handled differently by different authors in different books. So it makes it a difficult question to provide a comprehensive answer to. But if we're to take all of it and assume that most of it's accurate, loosely speaking, if you've got the spark of magic as a human, you can probably give it a go with most wins. That seems to be something that is broadly true. And often someone who is perceived doing something, like, for example, you are a young kid and you wake up and your room's scorched. You're going to the Bright College. That's where they're going to put you. Depending upon how your nascent powers are beginning to manifest, often determines where you're going to go to next. And they will sort of test you. Depending on the college, they'll do it in different ways. The college that takes in almost everyone is the light college. And often when no one knows where to put anyone, they just put them in the light college because they're constantly needing magically sensitive people to channel the heish that they require to keep that choral light wind gathering inside their college. So they have the biggest dropout effect, number, but they also have the most that pass through. Some fail. Some have got a talent in a different wind. Some move elsewhere. If you want to give it as a more in-world thing, loosely speaking, all humans who have got the spark of magic with them probably have, let's say, a number from 1 to 10 that could be assigned to each one of the winds of magic. They might have, say, light at 10, grey at 2, bright at 3. They might have, I don't know, Ulgu at 0. You know, popping up and down. And if you happen to go to the college that you are best at, great. You're going to be probably a really good wizard over there. But often they don't. So you might find someone who's got, say, Jade at 9, but they've got Bright at 4. They went to the Bright College, and that was enough for them to merely pass. And they get stuck on that single wind forever. And that will be it. And that might mean that there was a great potential that they never achieve. And that's just the way it is, because the setup for magic and ensuring that humanity doesn't, at least in the Empire, fall to corruption requires that they sit in that single wind, and also that wind slowly but surely changes them. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's not like some awesome kick-ass sorting hat type situation that figures it out. It's actually a lot more brutal and forcing square pegs into round holes than you would suspect.
Frequently. It's not a very good setup. It's also worth noting that
which is good because it causes conflict.
Yeah, it does. And it's great for stories. Is this something that could be fixed? Which is inevitably the next obvious question. Could we have someone that could potentially sense it in others? Yeah, sure.
If you watch LAWhammer, there is some characters who theoretically have solved this problem if the college has used what they did.
And they totally didn't give it over.
Nope.
So they were like, yeah, no, we're not giving you that shit. So is there ways to get around it? Almost certainly, yes. Could a clever magister within the colleges possibly come up with the equivalent of a sorting hat? You should go to the college, or the gold college. That's best for you. The answer is both yes, and it probably wouldn't happen. You might go, well, why wouldn't that happen?
Politics.
And politics is always the answer. And I'll give you one reason why, for example, let's say the Gold College might not like it. Let's say they got themselves an exceedingly promising apprentice, and they're halfway through their apprenticeship. On our 1 to 10 scale, they're sitting at 8 on the Gold Wind. Then along comes the magical fucking sorting hat and says, well, actually, that's 9 on the Light Wind, so we're sending them over there. And they're like, yeah, no, this is the most promising apprentice we've had this generation. Fuck you. And immediately we have conflict. So the awareness of this potential benefit is not necessarily going to turn into an outcome where someone actually fixes it, because there's going to be certain parties who don't want it fixed, who would much rather just reach out and grab whatever they can get their hands on and claim it as theirs. And a magical sorting hat would get in the way of that.
Well, especially if the sorting hat revealed something like, turns out humans are predisposed to certain winds, so one of the colleges is like barely getting anybody and starts falling apart.
Which, for example, the Jade Wind flows through everyone really quite well. The Jade Wind is one of the easiest to channel, and arguably most wizards might end up all starting at a base level of, say, on the 1 to 10, 6. So loads and loads of greys who may have existed beforehand, who would all be like 1 to 4s in grey, are all going to the Jade College because they've just slightly peaked it in Jade. But Jade spells in general are much less powerful than the other colleges. And if you're looking for war wizards who are murdering motherfuckers, you don't necessarily want them in the Jade College. You might prefer them to be in the Bright or one of the other colleges where they've got far more martial spells. You will find that the politics behind this...
Every action has a reaction.
Yeah, totally.
Have we ever played Magic the Gathering? Yes. Made some custom Wolfram cards. Would love to Warhammer battle, and would love to share them. Sure.
That's a good idea. Go slap that over in Discord. That's quite nice. In fact, I think it's fair to say that I've translated many games into Warhammer, that card games equivalent in many respects. The big war game that we did for episode 50 something, the big battle, the battle for the 5 armies.
Oh yeah.
So that's 50-ish, somewhere around there. The rules that I used for that are an adaptation of about 6 or 7 other games slapped together and then simplified significantly to turn it into something that I need for the game that I was using at home. I'm quite happy to just adapt, change, copy, paste rules all over the place for my home games.
So Lindsay, Grimm teaming up with Alamanowith if he had survived. So interestingly, and this is why I wanted to bring up address this, Alamanowith served as a a genuinely very dangerous temptation for Grimm, because in her, he saw a chance to really perfect the art of disappearing, especially from the whole Karanak thing. One of the angles that I thought about doing with the character ended up not happening because of the way the episode played out. But one of the potential routes for the character was that in his fear of Karanak, that he would see Alamanowith as to try and seize her power for himself. That he was going to try and do something either using the idea that I had, once again, didn't end up happening, and this is not the Grimm we got. But one of the ideas was trying to get Alamanowith to put the ring on, so that he could take a piece of her and run with it, in the hopes that he would either A, give Karanak on her scent forever, or B, allow him to disappear, stealing her power from her, which would have horrible, horrible ramifications.
Yeah, totally. So there was a host of potential stories that we could have told. But ultimately, because we were going with the Grey, I felt it was important that the type of story that was going to be told with Grimm would be ultimately a Grey story. And the Greys are not the types to normally do that sort of thing. Even when their souls are endangered, to have become a Grey, to have reached that point, they have to have taken on board so many special oaths. In many respects, if you've ever played, if you ever played any of the Dune games, the doctors, the conditioned doctors inside Dune, they are supposed to be effectively incorruptible, which is why Dr. Yue in the very first film, if you watched it, it was such a shock that someone who had been conditioned could potentially be undermined and used as a spy against someone else. And the Greys are all like that. They've all been conditioned. Each and every last one of them is somebody who should not be suspect of character, even if no one trusts them because of the Grey wind that they're doing.
He would, but to be fair, I think almost everybody does. Like, I imagine Grimm would have probably have failed like once or twice. At least.
So Grimm, there's a reason that Grimm is the age he is. He's what, 35, as I recall, 35. Okay, and in those in the years that he was taken in from when he was young, a late teenager, up to eventually passing his career, took like about 13, 14, 15 years. And he failed multiple times during the course of that, because you have to be impeccable of character. No matter how much the Grey wind itself breeds suspicion, it breeds duplicity. And your character has to be able to override that. And you have to be able to do the right thing. And that will mean very different things for different individuals. And I imagine that the Grey College tests are going to be quite uniquely tailored to put the biggest temptations in place in a way that they don't realize is even testing them. Indeed, in our version of the Grey College, you don't know when you're being tested. There's no big test. You don't go for the big examination. Then something happens at one point and the temptations are put in front of you. And do you fail? And the answer for him was, yeah, quite a lot. And that's not bad. They expect you to fail. It's a learning point. The whole point of the college is to make you reach the point where you are a better person. And even when you pass, it doesn't mean that you're going to become a magister. Then the debate begins. Well, now you've learned that. You're better than that. Where do we go next? So, yeah, it took him well over a decade to get just out of his apprenticeship and to become effectively a journeying wizard. But if you do look at his career, he's been in it. He's been a Grey Apprentice, Grey College Apprentice. That means he went to the Grey College and was trained in the college without the master being there, because his original master dies. Yeah,
that's actually why I, as Grimm made the snide remark towards Elric when they were talking about like history and politics and like the way he was acting and things of like, oh, you got out a little quick and a little snide, didn't you?
Yeah, and it's true. Bright wizards, by comparison, they get them through as fast as they can because they're looking for wizards on the front line to throw weapons, fucking fireballs. Okay, and that means that often they're being forged quickly. Greys, by comparisons, are forged slowly. They're not the slowest of the colleges. Celestials go even slower, and Lights go slower yet, but that's mostly because Light is so hard. In our version of the careers for the Light College, for example, when you reach that orange tier, that's the second tier, you're still not a wizard. You haven't reached it yet. You don't become a wizard until you hit the third tier, because the wind is so hard to actually turn into a usable form. It takes a lot longer for you eventually to reach that point where you can say, I'm a wizard. But for the Grey Wizards, it sits in the orange. That's the second tier. For those of you who know the Warhammer stuff.
Sage asks, if you could have joined us at any other point in the campaign, what bit would you have liked to play through with Grimm or another character? I mean, with another character, the options are certainly infinite. I was very, very fun. Though I love the way Andy played her so much that I don't think I would have wanted to play her. But I did make Valora Emberfist, the runesmith.
Yeah, she's runesmith.
And the way Andy did her was so good. I would never have wanted to do it because I couldn't have done it. But that being said, I think I would have really enjoyed probably joining the party. That's tough.
There's so many ridiculously destructive types.
Yeah. I think a really fun place to pop up could have been playing someone that's kind of really messed up and kind of insane, but potentially helpful in like the depths of Wittgenstein.
Wittgenstein was good.
That could have been quite fun.
And Wittgenstein would have been a perfect opportunity to include someone new just popping out at the surface. You saw that, for those of you who've watched it, Castle Wittgenstein is, without doing any major spoilers, in the second part in Death in the Reich. And it has a point where there's a bunch of prisoners. And any one of those prisoners could have ended up joining the party as they got their bid for freedom, very possibly to begin with, being seen in a very negative light, and then slowly but surely turning that over because of their individual backstories or whatever else comes to light. But yeah, that would have been a good one. I quite like that.
I don't know if you want to answer this, but Sage asks, I'm also interested, how exactly did Grimm see the divine miracle that snuck past Thankful?
Not telling.
Oh, there you go. Let's see here. Oh, there's a fun, just random question. Can a very powerful metal wizard effectively bloodbend because of all the metals that are a part of a body?
No, not by the way that bloodbending works over an Avatar. Quite different, but there is nothing saying that you couldn't create a magic that did that. It wouldn't really be a powerful metal wizard because there's too much Gyron involved with what you're looking for there. The blood is not just filled with metal. The very simplistic view that Avatar takes off, there's some metal iron in the blood. Let's bloodbend! Yay! Metal benders can do that! Woo! Yeah, that wouldn't work in the far more complicated system where there's not just simply 4 elements in Warhammer, there's 8 plus more. So you'd be looking to create either something new or a different adaptation of it.
Yeah, I think the most realistic form you would... blood has a lot of magic shenanigans going on.
It's a whole manner of crazy stuff with how blood's used in Warhammer in other ways as well. Yeah. So the answer is no, but yes, you could do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Gerhard almost revealing he used the great. He got so if he did not have that bullshit talent, the one where you're supposed
to honor.
Yeah, if he didn't have that, Grimm would have had him.
Oh, that was so funny. And yes, Gerhard, who can almost perceive and is on the edge of potentially even becoming some form of grey wizard himself.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there going, ooh, I need to learn this. Ooh.
Will Grimm make an appearance in our game? Maybe.
Who can say?
So thank you, Sage. If we had spent a fate point to call in the Calvary, who would you have wanted to see? So I have in my head there are 3 options that would have been really cool. The first would have been if I don't know why he would have done this unless he had been kind of tracking us through magical means and saw his brother. If Emmanuel had showed up to get his brother, and that'd been the call to Calvary, that would have been spicy.
Emmanuel Farron.
If a second one would have been, if I was being cheeky, which kind of did happen, would have been the Karl Franz on stage.
Interesting. Yeah.
Kind of like, he takes up the mantle and like actually starts doing what he's supposed to, what Karl Franz ideally would do, which he kind of did. And the third one that I think would have been really interesting would have been, which could have been a little convoluted because I don't necessarily know where the original one is, would have been that we got that original Karl Franz, we start making our way out, and as we're getting closed in, the original Deathclaw shows up.
All interesting.
Like a tired, wounded Deathclaw coming to save its master, and that desperate, the PCs ride the OG Deathclaw out while Grimm's doing stuff.
Yeah, so for those of you who've already watched other parts of our streams over in LAWhammer, you'll be aware that our last major call, the Calvary, eventually ended up with Gotrek and Felix turning,
which was fantastic. Oh, that was so good.
And Gotrek and Felix is an almost inevitable outcome when we're dealing with Thanquol. So there would be that small bit of maybe they should turn up, but no, we've already done that. I think that if we'd had a proper call to cavalry here, we might have done something a little bit different. The obvious things are indeed the Imperial family, because that's what's involved with this entire plot that they were working their way through, particularly given that one of the Imperial family is a Grey Wizard. The tie there is obvious. It makes sense. But I would have, given the story that we had, which had an enormous amount of Skaven gathering relatively close to the surface, working on big, huge artifacts that were down there and using those artifacts to effectively translate Skaven minds into humans, and to also copy minds and create new copies of other individuals, which were then getting Skaven minds popped into them. This is big stuff. This is big stuff that there are certain factions out there that they are going to want them. Clan Moulder would love to get the success of this particular outcome. Clan Scryer similarly are going to want access to these devices, which contains the technology of both of their clans in it. So I would have called the cavalry with Skaven.
I was going to say, well, you could have done a reference to the first Gracier book where, like, Clan Pestilence strikes here to try and take down Thanquol's potential rise.
Exactly. So what we're looking here to do is just bring in Skaven politics. It reinforces what the biggest enemy for Skaven is, and that's other Skaven. So most likely it would be that. Can we bring up that one there? Because that's amusing me. There's Red and Andy's hoodie. In fact, in those Hawks comment there. Is the Red and Andy's hoodie faded, or did it come that way? It came this way. So there's lots of N7 tops for those of you who are Mass Effect fans. Got Mass Effect hat on. Okay, but this is a black and white one. This is how it came. Lindsay got it for me for Christmas. And it is indeed an entirely monochrome one that I wear occasionally just to throw things, you know.
There you go. Schmidt asks, Lawhammering, I have a question. Speaking of hats, how does Lawhammer's there are multiple people wearing the Great Patriarch hat at once work with the career path that's been recently posted?
Yeah, there's only one Patriarch. Yeah, there's only one Patriarch. There are as many who may have posed as Patriarch at one point, but somewhat similarly, that would be a little bit like, if I've got a friend who's pretending to be the Emperor, let's say the Emperor's double, because the Emperor has a double, do I put the Emperor's double into the Sovereign career? The answer is no.
Yeah, so there is one true Patriarch.
There is indeed a true Patriarch.
Somewhere.
Yeah, the Patriarch that's most commonly marked as Reiner Stark is the Grey Patriarch.
Have either of you read Brandon Sanderson? I've been asked to, and I own some of his books. I haven't opened them yet.
Yeah, so I've only read Brandon Sanderson in the Wheel of Time context. Never got round to reading his books, although I've been told to multiple times.
I know that. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, so one day I presume I will get round to it, but I have yet to do so.
Shouldn't have picked that corn champion. So we had a funny discussion about that. So the original plan when I initially made Grimm was I was trying to think what could someone do that isn't horrifically powerful, right? Because the goal wasn't to make Grimm like a legendary lord type badass, but what could be done to make Grimm enough of a piss off Korn enough that he sends Karanak after him? Because that's a tall order.
It is a tall order.
And my initial plan was that Grimm ends up after, because he's a Great Guardian. He's a Lord Magister Vigilant.
He's a Master Vigilant. He's a battle wizard. He's a war wizard of the colleges.
Right.
With big spells.
Yeah. So the original plan was he was. If you don't know what a Master Vigilant is, they're kind of wizards that chase down wizards that have gone bad. So the idea that I originally had is that he's chased down so many demonologists and chaos wizards and wizards that have fallen to the ruinous powers that kind of through studying them so that he could learn how to beat them, he eventually learns enough about demon summoning, and through just sheer luck and a little bit of sleuthing around, he learns the true name of a reasonably powerful Cornate demon. And he ends up using the demon as a weapon. He's not using it in a corruptive sense necessarily, even though he really shouldn't be doing that. But he learns that, if I send a Cornate demon to kill these other people because they're wizards, it's the perfect assassin, essentially. Mm-hmm. And he has it bound really well, and it works really good for a long time. And then one time he fucks up, just once. And when he fucks it up, that demon basically screams to Khorne to avenge it. Because he's been so, for Khorne, using magic to use Khorne as a puppet is pretty offensive. And that's what gets Khorne to be like, fuck this guy, and send Karnak after him.
Oh, no, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, no.
You got it?
No, it's gone away!
That sucks. That real sucks. That's the worst kind of denial. It's the worst kind of blue balls.
No.
But then when I got here, Andy was like,
I got an idea.
I got an idea. And it was so much simpler, and it was like, that is much less convoluted.
So one of the reasons that I wanted a simpler plan wasn't because the story that Sotek had built for the potential link through to Khorne was bad.
You could just say it's bad. It's fine.
It wasn't. In fact, it was great, but because it was ultimately selfish. And it was ultimately against what the colleges are there to do.
Because
they didn't make a good Grey story.
The original plan for me was for him to be a gold wizard.
Yeah,
because I wanted to tie it into a time where the gold wizard, the gold college, there was a wizard there that summoned Karnak because he was a selfish dick, and Karnak kills a bunch of people in the gold college. I was originally trying to tie him into that storyline,
and I was like, let's not bother. Let's keep it that much simpler. I was driven in many respects by one of the conversations that had happened out on Discord. So somebody had pulled up in Discord what the Dance of Despair spell did in Winds of Magic. It is Winds of Magic. And I was like, what the fuck? Primarily because I thought that doing yourself a dance check to get out of this spell was just bullshit. And it also completely lacked all of the benefits of what Ulgu does. So when that came up, I was like, no shit, I don't like that. I've got a Dance of Despair spell that I had already on my PC. I'm going to adapt that, pop it into our rules. I did that, and I looked at it, and I went, yeah, that sucks. That's a shitty spell. I'll read it out to you in just a moment. That's a truly awful spell. And, that solves my problem, because if that was done to a Khornate champion and a favored one, a really favored one that he likes, and he just walks off a cliff, lost, in the most ignoble fashion, he's going to be pissed, and he sends his hound. But it made a better story than just the hound alone, because he was a Grey, and he found a way to kind of get out of it. No, he didn't get out of it at all. But through the machinations of what they did, the Grey College and the Light College working together to try and save his soul, they bound that demon. Now, not bound into a stick, not bound into a sword, not bound into a place, but bound into a set of actions. Because if you know anything about that big, huge, three-headed hound, when it's on your scent, it just doesn't get off your scent. It's coming, and it's got 3 heads, each of which are perfectly placed to catch you, whether etherically with one head, whether through time with another head, or physically through its 3rd head. It will sniff you out. And as it comes for you, other flesh hounds join it, until eventually you get this big wodge of flesh hounds coming tearing at you to rip you to shreds. Except they, between them, found a way to not so much trick it, but to stymie it. Before it got into its full speed of sprinting, it found him, it killed him, always someone else who had been tapped by that ring. He gives himself a bit of his soul away, often onto a Skaven, and the big hound arrives, kills everything there, goes away thinking it's done, and then immediately goes, the hunt's not over, I need to go find him again, and never gets the speed, never gets the big build-up of hounds coming along with it, meaning that it's trapped in this loop of trying to get him. And poor old Grimm, every week, is losing another small part of himself, and had been for almost 2 years. So some 100 times he had cut off a part of himself and placed it on something else so that it died. An enemy of the Emperor died instead. And that demon had been trapped in this loop for 2 years.
Ideally, an enemy of the Emperor. There, as you saw with the alleyway, sometimes there were unfortunate close calls.
Close calls all the time. And his job was to get down underground, because down underground had one other big benefit for Grimm, and that was the massive saturation of warpstone, which made it very difficult for the demon to track him alongside all of his spells that he had that masked his appearance and masked his, not just appearance, his scent and everything else as well. He had all of the spells that were all about fooling something else. And he's casting those spells all over the place when he's down there, and his trail gets warped up with warpstone. It takes a few days to properly find him. It almost cost him once in his dreams.
Yep.
Because it doesn't just hunt physically, it also hunts etherically. And that's why he had the big, massive scar across his, not scar, open wound. Wound that simply did not heal because Khorne did not want that blood to stop from flowing, sitting across his chest from one time when he was caught in his dreams. Not even physically, literally in his dreams. And he immediately woke up, did his thing to give it something else to go and hunt. So the colleges had effectively trapped one of Khorne's best demons, which was good. And unfortunately, by the end of that episode, in what you could argue is a lovely sign of the end times, Khorne's personal hound of vengeance is set free.
Yeah, so Grimm's sacrifice at the end, it really comes off as you might like, oh well, you know, it was a noble sacrifice,
noble,
but it was a heavy price, not just for Grimm personally, but for everyone, because now one of Khorne's biggest, baddest soldiers, in a sense, is back on the playing field.
And he made a choice. He sat there and he went, my best choice here is to effectively give my own soul up for the Emperor. That's what I'm here to do. These guys, fuck knows what's going on with those bullshit idiots.
Very true. Yeah.
Those bullshit idiots, but whatever they're doing, they're getting through. And they need monitoring somehow. They need to be controlled, but that doesn't matter. Right now, they have what I believe is probably the Emperor. And they have a figure that was captured, Katarina, and is being brought back to the surface, who may stop the entirety of the Empire falling into civil war. These figures need to get out, and I am willing to sacrifice not just my life, but my soul for this. And that is what it's like to be a Grey. Making really hard decisions and making the correct calls as and when they come. But I will do a quick readout for our battle lore, because we've got a bunch of battle spells.
Sure. You just want to pull it up on a little thing? I can grab it.
Yeah, we could do that. No, I'd rather just read it out. No, I'll just read it out. Just read it out. That means you don't get to see my typos. So I'm going to read this one out. So with the Battle Lore spell, Battle Lore Shadow spell, Dance of Despair, it's got a casting number of 15 on our side. You drive tremendous flows of writhing Ulgu directly into the mind of your target, swathing the mental layers in reality-altering whirlpools of confusing grey magic. So that's what you're doing. You do a contested channeling versus willpower test. So you're channeling versus their willpower to keep you out, to determine how long the spell lasts for. If you critical that test, it lasts for willpower minutes, so they'll be caught up for willpower minutes with it. If you pass, it's willpower bonus rounds. If you fail, it's just a single round. And if you fumble, the spell infects you instead with the duration of your own willpower bonus. So what happens with it? Affected targets begin to tremble, shake, and twitch, stumbling forward as their senses twist with visions of terrible possibilities, awful visitations from the past, and the horror of realized fears. Tears stream as the target then jerks, lurches, and dances forward. On their turn, so when their turn comes round in the round, if you're playing Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay standard rounds, the affected targets can only move directly forward at half rate towards a cliff if you happen to be a Cornet champion. The target will dance around small obstacles, bounce off larger examples, moving off in a random direction after this, and walk off any edges should they be presented, cliffs, taking falling damage as appropriate. After the duration, so for example, if you'd criticaled it after willpower minutes, or after suffering any damage, the target can attempt another channeling versus willpower test to break free. If failed, the target's willpower is reduced by 10 and will dance for another duration rounds, however long the duration lasts for, and then do another test and potentially keep on dancing till they just die.
Yep.
Which is great. Pretty nasty. If reduced to 0 willpower, collapses, unconscious, suffering major knockout, various other bits and pieces. When dancing, the target counts as stunned for the purposes of targeting. If the spell has survived, the target takes 1 stress for every minute or part thereof of dancing. If you want to know about stress, we've got stress rules up on the LAWhammer blog over on the Patreon. And they're just staying up there for free. So loosely speaking, that's a spell which, because you can boost up spells in our game using overchanneling, much like sitting inside the core rulebook. It affects one target normally, but you could make that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In fact, if you're a very good wizard, you could even take out an entire regiment with that as they just start dancing forward, losing it as various visions are plaguing them. And yes, he did that to a Cornate Lord, who was even wearing a collar of corn, and everyone expected it to not do anything. And Corn was freaking pissed.
Lured him real close to the edge and went,
he freaking pissed. So that's what our Dance of Despair does. And no, you're not going to use a dance test to get out of that. Because, hey, that's funny.
Diamond, you mentioned Battle of the Five Armies at some point. How would the armies of Middle-earth fare in the Warhammer world? The biggest thing you'd have to figure out is how exactly Tolkien's very soft magic would translate to Warhammer's magic system. And once you kind of figure that out, I imagine they'd be okay. There's some ugly shit going on in the Middle-earth world that doesn't tend to come up as much in like the Lord of the Rings, but more in its peripheries.
Yeah.
So elements of it would be very spooky and powerful, but you know, for your common soldiers, it would probably be a bit of a shock. But I think they'd adjust relatively quickly to similar-ish allies.
Yeah, their elves are bullshit. Their dwarves are very similar. They've got lots of similar stuff because, you know, Warhammer 2 quite a lot
they'd adjust
from there. There would be a certain amount of power disparities that you would need to make a call on. Because there are some heavy magic shit in Warhammer that's far beyond anything that Lord of the Rings generally shows. But there's also a lot of great subtlety to some of the evil the Lord of the Rings offers that could very well just screw with Warhammer shit. So, yeah, I wouldn't say any is better than the other, but I definitely say that as it stands, because Warhammer has been constantly driven up past 10 to 11 to 12 to 13 by various writers, as it stands, most Lord of the Rings armies would probably be in trouble.
Yep. Hawkeye, so a bit off topic, but it's about the Olgu Masters, the gnomes. Mm-hmm. What was the idea behind giving gnomes necromancy, and how would the Grey College react to gnomes in general?
Okay, they don't have necromancy per se, and they can do necromancy in the same way that people can do dark magic. Dark magic is what they've got. I wouldn't really mind the book, so I can get it. Just because you can get access to a thing, I mean, humans get access to chaos magic. So what's the thing about giving them chaos magic? Because some of them fall and do things that they shouldn't be doing. It's largely dark magic that gnomes are dealing with. Was there anything else on that one? How would the Grey College react? So the Grey College reacts to them much like most of the Empire, in that when they become aware of the full scope of what they can do, they're criminals. They need to be brought up and burned because they work with dark magic. They do. That is criminal magic. It is wrong. It is illegal. It's burning time. And as far as the gnomes are concerned, that's Teclis's fault. Because Teclis is a high elf who is completely stuck in one view of what magic should be, which is magic should be high magic and elemental magic downwards. All this dark stuff is for bad guys. Where the gnomes are sitting there going, well, I don't know. Well, that's right, sir. I've been doing dark magic since, when you were a little sprog. And they've got their own view for what dark magic is, an innately corrupting magic. In many respects, Ulgu is innately corrupting as well, because it is a very dangerous type of magic. But they have got the temperament to deal with it, or at least that's what they believe. That being the case, they think they're fine. And when the Empire finds out, they do not.
Yep. To be fair to the gnomes, though, they are slippery motherfuckers.
Yeah, they really are. And they don't. That's one of the reasons why they are upset with both the elves and also why they just don't come out with it. They don't tell anyone.
Yep. Colo, Teclis loses his memory and wakes up in Altdorf with a large pouch of gold. He then decides to enroll in the colleges of magic. What happens?
He wouldn't.
Yeah, he just wouldn't.
He's an elf.
He's an elf. Yeah.
Yeah, elves don't. Elves don't enroll.
You know
in
what would happen
magic.
is Teclis would stumble out on the street as the weakest elf someone's ever seen. He gets stabbed by some loser and get robbed in the end.
That's far more likely. Yeah, totally. Teclis is, as elves go, weak, palsied, a bit of a mess. And for all external species may look at him and go, well, he's a perfect elf. To other elves, he looks wrong, man. He's properly cursed by Cain. And that's a thing. But the colleges of magic aren't for elves. Some elves might go there to potentially study what they're doing, to potentially study even possibly with them, but they already know what they're doing. Yeah, it's broadly speaking not a college for elves. The elves would pick that one up, and as Sotek says, he'd probably die.
What would make the most sense for a skink to appear? Pass to the old ones, hopefully.
So in terms of our game, Pie Guy, assuming that everything goes well and we continue on to a second campaign, we are, like 90% through this campaign, let's say?
Yeah,
who knows how long that 10% will last, though. But we're really quite far through this campaign. And if we go on to our second campaign, which will be called Pass of the Old Ones, given the very name, you can probably guess that skinks would be a good time for them to possibly arrive.
No, yeah, I mean, a skink would be the most realistic character by far because they can actually talk and like learn other languages and they're a lot more clever than people would necessarily think.
And a lot more emotional now in they used to be in previous editions because of what happened with Techno.
Yeah, they're a very reasonable character to interact with humans. Though there is a part of me that thinks it would be very funny to play like a big Kroxigor that, like, if you could figure out how to communicate with it, it's very reasonable at following orders and is pretty chill. But if it thinks, and like when you're around it, it doesn't do a lot. But if you do that one little thing wrong that you don't realize is wrong, it turns into the most terrifying Jurassic Park scene. That would be very funny for me.
Yep, agreed. That could be a lot of fun. But broadly speaking, yes, that.
Amez, I can see Sotek making Grudgebringer that goes with him right after. Actually, what I would have liked to have done if I came in around then is I would have loved to have been a dwarf that felt compelled to join them after they kind of helped retake the hold.
They did in their own way. Although a lot of what they did was kind of invisible to what the dwarves were doing.
Well, it would have been just the dwarf that saw it.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's good because it creates an interesting, unique character.
I would have loved that because I love playing dwarves.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that'd be super fun.
And the Lizardman question, Andy, when we get to see a skink or a slaw and talk to the party?
And I think exactly the same answer goes to what we said before. If we ever reach them in a later campaign, then. It won't be this campaign. This is not a campaign.
Yeah, it was waterbending, not middlebending, whatever. Get off our ass.
Yeah, it's fair.
It would be interesting if Metal Wizard could basically burn away transmute your blood. Yeah, I mean
Pet Troop. It was definitely metal bending.
What? No,
it was metal bending.
No, it's waterbending.
You sure?
Yeah, because Katara does it.
I ain't going to need to check that out. I'll take your word for it. Totally.
Yeah, it is not metal bending.
No. I was certain it was metal bending.
Are you thinking, you're thinking like X-Men?
No,
X-Men is
Who knows?
metal.
I haven't watched it for a long time. Let's boil it down to that.
You know, Sage, I'm glad we didn't, though, because he would have been so messed up. I'm hoping they kind of used him in the original one with such a pain in the ass to keep. They got him back out somewhere. Because, like, ooh, yeah. That's what would happen if it was a big money TV. Yeah, that would have been the show off the big CGI Griffin.
Let's be honest, though. There were some pretty big monsters throughout the course of that episode already.
You just calling the Calvary
to rise. Holy crap. That would be...
It wouldn't be impossible because Telehinwin did get teleported into Slagmire by the Slon to stop what was going on there. Though for the party, that would have been a holy fuck, we need to get out of here because he is not warm blood sympathetic at all.
True fact.
He would have been like, look, more Sotek sacrifices. Excellent.
Woohoo!
Were there any Skaven minds put into blessed human bodies? Yes. Yeah, they show up in the episode.
And that was the problem.
Were they being affected by that connection to the gods in a way we didn't get to see?
That has yet to be confirmed as to exactly how it's working, but there's most definitely something there. That is a thing.
Let's see here. Boop. If I recall correctly, in an early episode, Grom was mentioned, and that very few effects of him on the current day, are there in the Greys we're maybe involved. That the Greys made a lot of people forget about Grom's just curb stomping the Empire.
Bullshit. Broadly. Classic example of Greys trying to make themselves look more important than they actually are. And they often do this, where they try to suggest that they're the ones responsible for making certain things happen. Having said that, though, the elector counts often will attempt to use Greys to promote their own individual agendas. And often their agendas can be simply summed up with a very, very simple story of, we're great, that bad thing that happened didn't happen. And the Greys, in many respects, are responsible for not doing that.
I was going to say, I imagine the Greys would almost always say no, but everyone would blame them for that anyway.
It's one gigantic a story of people just spreading lies about Greys and Greys spreading lies about Greys. The reason that Grom is broadly not remembered by many is because no one wants it to be remembered. that are in power because it was such a mess, except for those who were in power elsewhere. It's remembered across history books. It's very clearly remembered in many places.
Humans have pretty shitty memory.
Yeah, but it's 100 years ago. And this is something that always bugs me when people discuss this sort of stuff in forums, because they go, but it's only 100 years. None of that can move on. And I'm going to give you something that I think should give a really easy idea of how these things can change in very little time. And the memory of what came before can be really clear, but doesn't influence the current. When I was growing up, I'm going to go slightly political with this, but when I was growing up, my mum told me very clearly, if you ever hear anything close to a Nazi, run. If they're doing anything that I view as Nazi stuff, Nazi shit. In fact, my hand movement there was getting close. Just run. And when I was growing up as a kid, I would say approximately 1 in 5 adults hated Germans because they still held that idea of what happened during the World War. Now, no one does in the UK because they're all dead. No one remembers it. They do remember it because we have got a collective consciousness on the internet. We've got books. We have got a great deal more awareness of what actually happens. But we don't have anything beyond that. And Germans are fine. I've got loads of German friends. We've moved on. And that, in terms of when I was only like 60 years beforehand. Less than that, 50. It's been over 100. And in that time, everything has changed. And all of the great horrors and terrors of 100 years ago are ancient history in only books. And that's the only place where they really matter. Historians bring it up. Other people like to say, yeah, but none fell. People from none say, no, they didn't. Okay, they just didn't. That didn't happen because my place is better than your place because people are like that. And what's your proof? And suddenly the Greys are blamed.
Yeah.
It's a time in a world where facts are always going to be slippery anyway, erodes massively at what everybody else knows. And it is super easy when people who think they're clever come in and say, well, that was the Grey College. The Emperor did that. The Emperor's making us look rubbish.
Yeah, or your neighbor or whatever. It's their, so.
Yeah, totally.
Especially because they don't have any kind of, they don't have reliable sources of good information, which even though we do, we still forget things like fucking crazy. But yeah,
we do.
Tyrant, hot take. Chaos is cosmic horror done badly, and literally every other antagonistic faction is more interesting. Thoughts? That's interesting. Taking chaos as a cosmic horror is I'd say that's, I don't know if I would hugely agree with that. I'd say there are elements of them that come off as cosmic horror where it's like, oh, they're supposed to be unfathomable and yada yada, which I think the majority of writers just don't do.
Yeah.
Modern writers treat them as they are individuals, they're personalities that have a defined person. I can't really agree with that interpretation of chaos, which, you did note it's a hot take, so I respect that. Like when I think cosmic horror and fantasy, I think like the Feaster from Beyond, or I think like the ill-defined gods that the writers have not made into individuals yet, and hopefully won't. But so yeah, I could see that. That's not how I feel about them.
Okay, Tyrant, I'm going to take your hot take, and I'm going to agree. Chaos was originally kind of cosmic horror. Take a look at what they tried to do in Shadows over Bogenhafen, which was basically a Cthulhu adventure in Warhammer. It's a fantasy Cthulhu adventure, which ends with this great cosmic horror sitting in a starry field coming up towards the players. And it's awful. And Tzeentch is at the core of that, and it's a Cthulhu adventure. And you might go, yeah, it's not. Shadows over Bogenhafen is 100% a Cthulhu adventure in terms of both its
Shadows over
creation. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's based on a Cthulhu adventure for the name. Short story. A bit further than that, Brian Ansell, when he asked for it, asked for a Call of Cthulhu adventure for his Warhammer game. The whole thing is Cthulhu. And that's what it kind of started off with their version of Chaos. But their version of Chaos also included a whole host of philosophical elements from Michael Moorcock and what he did with Chaos. But it also included a whole host of very physical elements for their Chaos Warrior miniatures, the Brew miniatures, which became Beastman miniatures, Brew from RuneQuest, Beastman for Warhammer. And all of these elements combined together turned into eventually the Realms of Chaos books, where they started to be defined in different ways. And they were less cosmic horror and more chaos gods. And this developed over the course. So is it cosmic horror done badly? Yeah. It's not cosmic horror done well because it's no longer cosmic horror. They've moved beyond those particular boundaries.
What I will say is, Tyrant, I 100% agree with this if we're talking about 40K.
Yeah. But the next part, though, literally every other antagonistic faction is more interesting. I disagree. Chaos brings a great deal to the table. And one of the reasons that those other things are interesting is because Chaos exists. And they're often working in opposition to Chaos as well, which makes them more interesting than just simply being nihilistic destructors of all, which Chaos sort of has become. So I would say that they are not more interesting. They are complemented by Chaos.
Thank you about that. It's already asked Andy this, but Sotek, would you rather be a Mortarch or a Demon Prince? I mean, those both suck pretty hard, but I would rather be a Mortarch because at least there's a possibility I get put down and stay down.
Yeah, now that's a good reason. I like it.
Yeah, Demon Prince, that's eternal suck. There is literally no way out. Korenshima, did you reveal what you're doing tomorrow? No, but we'll do it now.
Yeah, sure. Go.
So tomorrow it's gonna be very chill. It's also gonna be a lot earlier. There's some cool stuff we really have to do. Which requires us to do shit on Thursday very early.
Yeah.
So on tomorrow at 4 p.m. British time, which is going to be 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. So a lot of people will probably not be able to make it because they're at work and shit, and that's okay. Watch the VOD or whatever. That's totally fine. We're going to do a very casual, essentially kind of like a Q&A-ish type stream. But there's a twist. There's a twist of Andy is getting an assortment of, I don't know if goodies is the right term, baddies, potential goodies, hopefully, God, I hope, from around Scotland. So things like Iron Brew, haggis, all this kind of stuff.
And of course, a good Greg's pasty.
Yeah, and I will be trying things that I can only get and suffer here. That I have studiously avoided, politely but studiously avoided in my prior visits.
I can't express how much I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be ridiculous. So yeah, we're going to be answering lore questions because we can't help ourselves.
Yeah.
But we're going to use the opportunity of him being here to expose him to all of the fine culture and fine dining. That will involve me doing my damnedest to find something that can be delivered to this house that I definitely want on that list. And if you're out there and think there's anything particularly Scottish that you think you should try, dive into our Discord, start a thread over there. And
his Discord, not mine.
Yeah, totally. And throw it out there, preferably not linking in Sotek's name so that he doesn't know what might be coming.
No, I want to be surprised.
Yeah, it's going to be super fun.
Yeah, we had a very, very nice lunch. Andy and Lindsay took me somewhere very, very cool.
Which you're
and Andy had like a really nice haggis. He's like, you want to try this? I was like, no, it's for tomorrow.
Let's leave the haggis for tomorrow.
Yeah. But should be fun. It should be stupid. It should be a good time.
Yeah, it's going to be.
But let's see. Oh, here's a fun question. Do you have a name in your head to the Chaos Champion?
I do not. I purposely didn't want to pin it down because I thought I might want to use it later, as is often the case. When I don't give facts, they're generally sitting there waiting to be used at a later date. And if I confirm it, that means that I can't use it in a different way later. So as it currently stands, it hasn't been named, and I probably will at some point name it.
Are Emmanuel and Grimm aware of Marcus and Gorman and Thrisket's Skaven investigation? Marcus and Gorman and Thrisket.
Okay, Marcus and Gorman. Took me a wee while to realize what you say. Marcus Fisher. Okay, and Gorman and the Skaven investigation that they were doing. So, Schmidt, that is an interesting question. So, are they aware of what the Supreme Patriarch of the Eight Colleges of Magic is doing with Marcus Fisher? The answer is no.
There you go. Corin screaming. That's what he's always doing. That's not.
I mean, it's not new for Corn, let's be honest. Send in the hounds!
The second hand talks about spell kills my browser. Strong shit.
I mean, it's one hell of a spell, that one. It's nasty.
Schmidt, thank you very much. I had a blast. Genuinely the best roleplay experience I've ever had.
Oh, thanks. It was interesting as well because often for our episodes, from my side, I've got to do my plan, figure out what's going to happen, all the rest of it. And the players are just exposed to whatever the hell happens. We're not one of those streams that pre-plans, that goes, today, we're going to have this happen and this happen, which will give you the perfect moment.
Is so off the cuff.
And you're going to have the perfect moment to do a speech that's pre-prepared and you can think about your speech. Yeah, screw that. In terms of this, though, we had a character that we wanted to clearly have a beginning, middle, and end because it wasn't going to be going any further than this episode. Now, that didn't mean he had to die at the end of the episode, although he had a pretty epic end. But it did mean that we needed to have an end for that character's story throughout this episode. So we did discuss that and different ways that we could introduce what's happening with the character and then show what's happening with the character through the course of the episode, and different ways that that could conclude at the end, with none of them actually being what's going to happen. It was more of a, this is what we have, let's see where it lands. And Sotek's job was to play the character, have fun, and hopefully give it an end when I was feeding him stuff that potentially could go there. But no one else in that room had the slightest briefing at all because we just don't do them. We just let the roleplay go where the roleplay goes because we do that. It's like a real roleplay game.
It was a fast and furious 45 minutes of Andy exposition dumping everything he could know and could tell the party, and was trying to figure out, ooh, that would probably be useful to tell them, but I'm not going to tell them unless it comes up. Because there are a couple of things that Grimm would have liked to have told them, but there wasn't enough time. There wasn't.
Particularly near the end as well, when Grimm made a decision. And that decision was quite clearly, these guys are going to move out of here and I am not. Which means that there are certain things I should probably say to them before they're gone. And that was a really important character point for Grimm, because it wasn't an acceptance of who they were. It wasn't an acceptance of anything other than they were going to get out. And he wasn't. And they were going to get out with something that was so fundamentally important to the Empire that they needed as much support as they could possibly have to that point. But he did drop a very useful piece of information for them in general. And that was that the Light College is currently looking for ways to,
and of course,
permanently end demons.
Did not give them a single name of anyone they could talk to. Just said the Light College.
Yeah, 100%.
Figure it out, numbnuts. One great wizard who was really awesome was Jeremiah Scribner from the first Thankful novel. Yeah, he was. We actually talked a bit about him in the build up to the thing, because one of the ideas is would that be one of Grimm's alter egos? Is that some Grimm might know? Because whether or not that novel had happened by this point is kind of up in the air.
Yeah.
Because the Gotrek and Felix books are so weird timescale wise.
You can put a different timescale to it each time you try to do it.
Yeah, where I think
and
it's like
fit.
Yeah, where I think like in the newest book C7 just released, I think they're like Gotrek loses his eye in 2497. Which means that by that point, him and Felix have gotten together already, which means that they went through the riots. So it would have been Karl Franz's dad, not Karl Franz.
But it was Karl Franz in the book.
Yeah, but that also doesn't make sense.
That's the whole thing's just a bit borked. The problem is that the novels started being written in one version of the old world, and then were written in another version of the old world, and then were written in another version of the old world. And then as time went by, they started to contradict not just the world that was out there, but themselves.
Yeah, maybe Felix is just really bad with dates and names. But
and women.
With just everything. So I think in my head I would be shocked if I wouldn't be surprised if they had run into each other before. But only a very brief passing.
Just want to call out the bloodbending being waterbending comments. Thanks. Thanks for confirming that. It's been too long since I watched that clearly. God damn it. I'm going to watch it again.
If Arcane represents the end of the Warhammer world, who represents the fans' refusal to let the Warhammer world end?
It's easy. Okay, the answer to that is the PCs.
Yeah, who you play.
Every single time. So the PCs represent the world doing something different every single time, because the second you start playing a game, they might do something. And they may, for example, meet Karl Franz. Hi, I'm Karl Franz. I'm the Emperor. I'm looking very serious, thrumming my way at you. And they go, ha ha, surprise pistol, shoot me in the face. Okay, and immediately that means in their game world, Karl Franz is dead, which means all of the story of the end times can't unfold the way that it did, which means immediately PCs have made a difference. So the answer to that question is always individual groups role-playing their own way. Will our version of the Empire in LAWhammer have Karl Franz as Emperor at the end of it? Will it be someone else? Will there be an Empress? Will it be a completely different setup? Nobody knows because we haven't got there yet.
That was kind of like when y'all were decided to do like the Enemy Within and sort of, rewrite elements of it. That was kind of like an idea behind it, right?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, the core point of the Enemy Within was to show how PCs can make a difference. And it's something that sadly, to a degree, I think that Cubicle 7 in their version sort of missed the point. The point that at least
big time.
on. So their version of the Enemy Within ends, and this is no great spoiler because everybody kind of knows what the original intention was. I stated it at Warhammer Fest in front of crowds of many, and that was to take the setting of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1, which is very different to what comes later, and show how that can become Warhammer Fantasy Battle 8. So 1 to 8, Fantasy Roleplay 1, Roleplay 8, and Fantasy Battle 8. And to do that, certain events occur through the course of the Enemy Within, and at the end of it, you will have a result that is probably going to be Warhammer 8. But if it is, then you've guaranteed the end of the world. Because Warhammer 8 ends with the end of the world.
Yeah, that's the really clever part, is that it kind of wields the PC's nostalgia against them, of that they want to get to the Warhammer world they know and love, but by doing that, they've destroyed it.
And that's cool. The whole thing is a really nice setup. But instead, the official version of it that got printed was instead, well done, you've saved the Empire, Karl Franz is on the throne, we've now made Warhammer 8, and without the PCs, it would never have happened. That's not true. That's what Games Workshop set up. Without the PCs, it would have happened anyway. That's exactly what would have happened. So the ultimate, you could say, challenge of the Enemy Within is to come out with an outcome that is different, because then, arguably, you will come up with something different to the end times. And that's what you're looking for. But some people really want to dive into the end times.
Some people want to be in it and then try to stop it.
Yeah, totally, which is super fun. So it's just one way of doing it. The original intention was to have like about 15, 20 different potential endings. With the ending that is what they consider to be the best ending inside the current version actually being the worst ending. Being the absolute horror where the greater demon has won because you've just guaranteed the end of the world.
Yeah, Magdrive, if Chaos hadn't won the Storm of Chaos campaign, would GW have ended the setting then, or were there plans? No, it was meant to continue.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but the funny thing about it was that the whole point was Chaos was supposed to be super spooky, and there was probably going to be some kind of cool reveal at the end where the good guys beat him by that much and managed to push him back or whatever.
I should ask Gav because he'll know.
Yeah, you should.
Ask Gav.
The problem was Chaos got its shit so thoroughly rocked.
They had their ass handed to them
that the invasion would have ended before it started. So that's what goofed it so hard.
I kind of agree. And the story that was then written for the Storm of Chaos afterwards to justify just how badly it had gone, and maybe that wasn't as bad as it looked, it wasn't the best story in the world.
No, what they really should have done for that age of like the internet and everything is they probably should have had, we're going to tell a canonical story, but you can influence minor fights that are happening around it that will allow you to kind of make your mark on the world, but we have a story we want to tell. The problem was allowing people to be involved in the main story because it really fucked with stuff. And you can see it. There are some Wayback Machines or like on some safe places you can kind of find some of the old articles and stuff, and it's very funny reading them. Because the bad guys were not having a good time.
Pop that one up. Hawk. Because I'm not sure. How is Lucas' character sheet that's attached to the Google Doc with Grimm? It's not. There you go. It's ancient. So there we go. That was super easy. In fact, I'll delete that afterwards because it is super, super, super old.
This is actually a funny comment. I do wonder if orc WAs get mashed together in humans' collective memory. So, well, you have to remember, those aren't the only two WAs. There are a lot of WAs that get close or have done some damage. So, yeah, I imagine for a lot of humans, they do get just
100%. And the great WAs that we have, for example, in the Orc and Goblin army lists are just peak examples amongst a great mountain range of different WAs. And a WA that seems unimportant to the Empire as a whole could be exceedingly important to, say, Ostermark, because it swoops down and takes out a third of Ostermark. That's big news. So, yeah.
Yeah, wear the lead box. Yeah, that'll protect you.
That's funny, Sage. Yeah.
Kobo, when I was in the moot, I saw...
I just don't mind knowing, who isekai you into the moot? Isekai straight in there.
Yeah,
Colbo, your life is awesome.
Not when my character, when I personally...
I was in the moot.
I saw a gray in the company of a diplomatic delegation from Kadak Varn. Last I heard, they were eaten by a sun dragon in the Grey Mountains after fleeing from Athaloran. Oh, dear.
Oh, dear.
Well, that sounds like it didn't go well.
Even the Esk 1000, it's like, it's a guy. Anyway, just ignore me.
When are you moving to Scotland? Probably never.
What a surprise. Is it the fine weather?
Yeah, it's like, listen, there's a lot of shit going on at home, but it's still my home. And I'm very much I'm not gonna run, I'm gonna stay and deal with shit kind of person. Let's see.
Take the Iron Brew comment, because I think that's what I'm saying. We're doing that tomorrow 4
live.
PM onwards, live. So you will get to see him do this.
I mean, it might not be bad.
I love Iron Brew, but that's because I'm Scottish.
Did he know Alicia? I doubt he did, because Alicia... Well, okay, so this is actually a funny thing. I don't know if this is the case in LAWhammer. I'm not going to ask him if it is the case, because I think it's better not being revealed, at least not yet. But in Vermintide, it's revealed that Christoph Engels, the wizard of Ubersreich, is not real. He's not a real person. He is Alicia, who is a Kislevite old lady that is very good at shadow magic.
And definitely isn't a shadow wizard.
And definitely not.
Because they never lie.
No. And she's actually really, really powerful.
Yeah.
So I would say that I would bet Grimm is aware of Christoph Engels. I probably would doubt they've met.
No.
I imagine
they're walking different circles. His story path takes him from Vertbad up towards Altdorf, and then from Altdorf he moved into the state armies, kicking around the Middle Mountains, back to Altdorf again, then diving down under.
Yeah, I don't think they would have ever crossed
paths. So there's no reason for them to ever cross paths. The Empire is huge, and to say that everybody knows everyone is to diminish how big it is, and it makes the Empire feel smaller. It makes it feel like it's less of the enormous blocks of different grand provinces that comprise of it. So the answer for that is pretty much no.
Gotrek and Felix are almost never sober. Felix being bad with names and dates is not only plausible, it'd be weird if he wasn't. Well, you have to remember, technically, the books you're reading are not actually his journals. They're his journals having gone back to his brother, who then had them kind of rewritten a little bit and then released, at least according to some. Now, whether or not that's the version we're reading is up to interpretation. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of potential shenanigans. Let's see. It always cracks me up when y'all start arguing about like Lord of the Rings lore amidst the stream. When will you force Sotek to record music for games? I don't do that, so hopefully never, because I would do nothing for them.
And when will we ship the LAWhammer crew to Koresh? Holy crap, that would be bad. And if you want to know more about the LAWhammer crew going to potentially crazy places, Past the Old Ones will probably be the one to look at in terms of campaigns.
Ricky Chapman, currently building a custom Demon Prince model who collects weapons and want to ask, what are your favorite weapons in Warhammer? My favorite weapon is probably, if you're talking about a named weapon, my favorite is the Revered Spear of Tlangsha. I love that thing. The fact that every time it's an old one weapon, which is just baller as fuck, and it looks super cool. The fact that every time if it just scratches you, it causes you to just say doom-laden, horrible visions is just a fun nightmare fuck type thing. And it just looks badass. It just looks badass as fuck.
Yeah, I'm going to go really mundane here. It's not mundane, but it is. When I was young and I was collecting my first sets of armies, there were certain weapons that always excited me or interested me in a way that others didn't. Your standard sword, your standard, I don't know, cannon or whatever else it might be. They were all parts of armies and existing, but some of the armies had their own unique shit. And they were the ones that caught my imagination. And I remember when I was young, painting my first poison wind globe and going, this thing's fucking awesome. Everything that it represents and what it does. And the actual horror of what's held inside this globe. And the rubbish rules that it has by comparison to the extraordinary description that it has in the lore. But one of the reasons that things like that, or the Skaven Giselle, the reason that they always stick in my mind is because it reminds me of the difference between rules and lore. The background setting material and what it says balanced off against what the battle game requires and the rules that it uses to provide balance or an interesting experience. And often they don't work at all together. In some cases, they don't work. Their stats make zero sense at all. Just take a look at, say, Galrauch, okay, who has the most ridiculous stats for the dragon of its caliber. It makes no sense at all. So as a constant reminder of that, the Poison Wind Globes always sit in the back of my mind.
Yeah, and if you want to make dungeon weapons, I like the Lizardman axe thing. Like, not, I mean, the regular club sword ones are cool, but the ones that are kind of axey, where it's like the big stone, it's got the teeth almost coming off it. Very cool.
That's cool.
Moritz, I'm kind of insecure. I'm at 42.2 in the series. Will I be spoiled watching this? No, probably not. Not this.
No,
stream.
most of what we're discussing here is more.
It's pretty casual.
Yeah, it is. We're not diving into any of the great details, and the details that we're diving into are not campaign specific per se. We are discussing the campaign in a more general light, but I think it'll be fine.
This hasn't been revealed, or this hasn't been released yet.
It's because it got lost. Okay, so hey, Amadeus, let's discuss this one. So Sienna popped up in, for those of you who play Vermintide, you'll know Sienna already. She popped up in a couple of points in our episodes around about the 50-ish area. We recorded, Dan and I, a quick side stream with Elric and Sienna. It died. It just didn't record. Our tech went weird, and you've been here. You've seen the tech go weird more than once. It happened at the start of this stream for 6 minutes. It was bad. It happens sometimes, and it happened for this episode. And at the end of it, Dan and I looked at each other and went, "Did anything happen here that we need to actually discuss? Is there anything here that we need to re-record?" And he was like, "No." And I was like, "You're right. No. There's only one thing that came out of this, and it was this. So we'll mention that at the beginning of the next episode, because at the beginning of the next episode, you're going to be with someone else. So we can just discuss it there." So we discussed it there, and we had it happen effectively off screen. So that happens off screen, and it will never be recorded again. It's a thing that occurred in the past, will not be shown. But we will probably see her again, because she's attached to a large, for those of you who have not reached that point, a large group that are going to be a part of the ongoing campaign.
There you go. When the heroes go to the worst place in the world, Bretonia.
I love Bretonia.
Bretonia is very cool.
Yeah.
If the Eye of Shirian Archeon gets hit with the revered spirit Plancha, does he play Vision Roulette? Well, so rather amusingly, hopefully the Eye of Shirian's goal would be not to get hit. But I think it would kind of be like, imagine like you're watching a set of streams and then something kind of takes over and is playing over it. You would have to get through the playing over because if anything, it would probably enhance what the Aishirian does, but show like worst possible outcomes for a little bit. But to be fair, it also vaguely, it can be resisted by people of strong will. So Archaon actually would probably be able to tank it. Alexander, if you had to use Coadel for anything on your LAWhammer game, what would you come up with? So I want to go first because it's his game, but I want to go first. What I would do is I would give the PCs the opportunity to get absolutely fucked and tricked by Drycha, where Drycha comes to them in a glamour because she's very good at it. Like, she's one of the best glamour artists in the world. Drycha comes to them and ends up being a very good ally to the PCs and basically gets them to steal one of the things or destroy something, do something for her that results in a piece of Coadel's prison being broken. And because it's the PCs, it's the last thing she needs. And Coadel's prison breaks, which is a canonical thing that does happen, and he escapes. That's what I would do, because that is something PCs will do, of like, oh, we need to do this for our thing, or she convinces them it's for the greater good, or it does genuinely screw over some chaos group. But them being too short-sighted or silly to realize that they've unleashed a terrible, terrible evil on the world.
Yeah, this is interesting. So I will not confirm nor deny that this will happen. That's number one. And I will also not confirm nor deny that I've thought about this, which I think is very much confirming it.
Yeah.
But I will say that all the way back in episode 2.5, out there anyway, which is Family Ties, I think it was called, where LAWhammer meets with her great nephew, as I recall. And they have a big long conversation.
That was a funny episode, actually.
And yeah, it was an early one. It was setting up a lot of stuff that's become quite important later. And in there's a fairly almost histrionic conversation where it becomes clear that they have had to call upon the Azrai, the Wood Elves, for support because they no longer have a seer. They no longer have someone to guide them. And they have called upon the Azrai for support, who have opened up the world routes to them so that they can do things that they weren't previously capable of doing. They've effectively allied with the weirdos in Athel Loren that they really don't like at all because of what LAWhammer had done. And that opens that door. And that's as far as I'm going to go.
There you go. Let's see. I saw am I feeling better? Yes, I feel pretty much 100% normal. The only thing I still have left is that when I laugh, it's about a 50-50 shot if it'll sound like a human laugh or if it'll sound like I turn into Dodgy Johan for about 5 seconds. So that, yeah. Have you seen Old World RPG Book today? I saw it. I haven't like looked at it in depth because we've actually been pretty busy today.
We have.
What are my hopes for it? That's hard to say.
Good game.
Yeah, well, okay, that was never mind. Yeah, but for me personally, I am very much GW has, in my opinion, GW has sort of let me down when it comes to exploring how the old world was different than the era of Karl Franz. They just turned the old world into the era of Karl Franz because they're lazy and they want to just do their minis, which fine. So what I'm kind of hoping is that the old world game will be the chance to try and paint how the world was different 200 years ago. Though there is a part of me that kind of likes GW's laziness because I can kind of use it as an excuse to say, oh, well, the era of Karl Franz is now 200 years ahead of this. So things are going to evolve and change. So I can make the world different. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. But, so I hope they don't do the same thing that GW is doing, where it's just the same exact thing in a slightly different coat of paint. That would
suck. It almost validates the need for an extra game, and I really hope that's not the case. It's like having two 40K games. For example.
Well, other than it has a different system.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I hope that it makes the old world a unique setting. I think that's pretty much it. The tagline "Glim and Glorious" sort of goes against the idea of heading towards the great chaos incursion of the next ever chosen. And as he, comes swooping down, Glim and Glorious.
Glim and Glorious?
Grim and Glorious.
Oh, Grim and Glorious.
Oh, yeah, Glim and Glorious. I can't skip my words out. Grim and Glorious sitting underneath, rather than grim and perilous. And glorious really is an interesting word because it's not a time of great glory. If anything, it's a time of horror that's coming up. So it's quite a different tone to what you might necessarily expect. I mean, it's a cool tagline, but it's a tagline that really does lead into feeling like it'll be a much more heroic game than what we had before, which I think is very likely. But it's going to be quite a different tone to what we've seen before, and I don't think that's bad.
Yeah, I don't think that's bad either.
Yeah, I think what I really would like is a game that is quite clearly different.
Yeah, and I will say I am very, very curious to see how C7 is going to, GW and C7 are going to navigate the waters of how books come out for this to expand the setting, because this is the first time in a long time that C7 is going to be releasing lore about things that are happening that GW is doing right now, as opposed to 10, 15 years ago.
And we've already seen that GW themselves are quite willing to present what they think is right and then change it. And they've done that multiple times with the Old World. We've got books that have been published by the Old World now that include maps that they have actually changed and turned into something else. Just look at Tilia, for example, to get a good grasp of how things are shifting at Games Workshop as well. So they're dealing with an IP that is in a state of flux, which means that they're going to, as C7, have some relatively unique challenges developing a world that Games Workshop themselves are in the process of developing. So they might have free reign in a way you don't expect, but they might be curtailed in a way that you don't expect as well. It's not like they can just do what you do in 40K. I'll carve off this sector up here. This is my sector. I will now create a whole ton of cool shit for that sector. That's our game. Away we go. Woohoo! You can't carve off a bit of the Empire and just say, that's our bit of the Empire. Although, to a degree, maybe you can. Maybe they'll just make their own little corner. And that's how they'll develop outwards, up in Talagad or some equivalent. It would be an interesting choice to stick to that alone, but that very well may be what it does.
Yeah, I will say, what I hope they don't do is I hope they don't try and make it where the Old World game explores places that they haven't gone yet in Wolfrit 4th and try to be like, well, if you buy both, because like they should be in very different times and they should be different settings.
Yeah.
But I could see them doing that.
Yeah. I mean, there was earlier comment about how it was going to be set up just in Talabheim or some similar. But that's weird because it's the Old World game. The Old World suggests all the Old World, just by the title of the name. It's not Warhammer Talagad. It's Warhammer the Old World. And you get that feeling that you're going to get more. Plus, the art suggests that. We've got our Bretonian sitting on the front, swishing away, doing her best to interrupt whatever naughtiness is going on with the bad guy beastman. And that being the case, and you get that feeling it's an old world facing game, but if it's very focused on its setting, it's going to be a weird balance. So I'm hoping that we get an old world game that's got its own reason to exist. I'm quite excited by what that could potentially be.
If we were going to add a third, that's a lot in the old world. What else faction along with the Azrai and the Ironeer, where do you put them? What would you do with them? I would want to put them somewhere far away from the others. I would want to go like to the Southlands or over towards Cathay, or I'd want to mess with things.
Do something different.
Yeah.
There's more than enough opportunity in the Warhammer world to have many different elven outposts of various kinds. And in multiple older versions of the lore, particularly when you move back to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1st edition, you'll find out enclaves of elves still sitting in various old forests down hidden away in mountains here or there that have been there for a good 3,000-4,000 years and just never really moved on. So that can be done. I don't think it's stretching the lore in any way, and they wouldn't be high elves, they wouldn't be dark elves, they wouldn't be wood elves as we understand them. Much like the Aeoneer, they'd be their own thing. So I think that's fine, and I think they could be almost anywhere, but I would be not inclined to include them in the old world. It's got fucking enough already. Just take a look at how hard it is for Total War to try and encapsulate everything that's been created for the Warhammer game. And they find that the Empire just has to get bigger and bigger and bigger as it dominates the map because all the characters are there. And that's where they all start. And then they have to come up with stupid reasons like, Gelt, he's an alchemist, right? To get there with you, woohoo!
I like that storyline.
Mother Stank, yeah, well,
I like that storyline.
Screw Gelt. Mother of Stankia, let's put you in Nagaroth, cause yeah. And it's all a bit weird. And characters that you would expect to be in their homelands just aren't. And I would, if I was expanding out further, try to support not just making something really cool, but support the other licensors who are attempting to have to navigate the things that are being created by other people. So it'd be really nice to do something else.
Yeah, probably
elsewhere.
The one that I would follow the strongest would be the story of Orion, who goes down to the Southlands and is like something that exists in the older lore and Total War very heavily expanded. I would run with that, of elves that went down to the jungles of the Southlands and they stayed there for some reason.
Yeah, that's the goodest thing as any to go with. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like that.
The Discord link for the character.
Yeah, I did post it. So I'll let's see if it just Control V's.
Oh,
look at that! It was already sitting there. So there's the character sheet link, so that's it, just direct. You don't need to go in.
Just do it at the board prints and then it just doesn't matter.
You know,
very true. Very true.
You're absolutely spot on about that one. If you do it in the Border Princes, it probably wouldn't matter. I mean, heck, the Border Princes are changing even in the old world in terms of how they're presenting.
It's Zaoming, not Yaoming. How dare you? But yes, I also like my alchemical romance.
Nope.
CA nailed that.
Nope. 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 Screw that guild guy.
Yeah, there will definitely be elves in Cathay. They're probably going to be very Asur leaning, but I do look forward to the day we finally get a little bit of lore on the. I really want to know about the metropolises along the eastern shore.
Good luck with that. They haven't even included in the recent Dragon release for the model. So good luck. It's a bit of a shame.
I know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But looks like we're pretty much caught up with everything.
Okay, cool. Before we decide to just piss off, there's a few other things that I think are worth covering.
Yeah.
What was it like? What was it like? What was it actually like?
That's great.
And
maybe we should talk about the thing we actually said we were going to talk about.
The other side of the world, you have hiked it by, one presumes, not the past of the old ones, all the way over to the LAWhammer studio, which, by the way, is really huge.
Giant. Yeah, absolutely. Titanic. It's the biggest thing I've ever seen.
Classic piece of old world realization from New World person. There's no space here. How the fuck does this even work? And the question is answered with, it doesn't always.
Man, that's the fucking truth.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah, not a lot of space there. It was super tight in the room. But what was it like?
So overall, when it initially started, I was actually quite nervous. I want to say, I can't remember if I did it before or right after the stream started, but I think if you watch, no, I think I did it right before the stream went live. But I very stealthily took a little half piece, like 0.25 milligrams of one of my strong anti-anxiety meds, so I could just be chill during the stream. But so it was nerve-wracking at first, but once we kind of got going, it was super duper fun. One of the big things was being able to bring a lot of what I hope came across as kind of community or audience reactions, or the reactions that I had to a lot of the things the players have gone through or seen or done through a character who would he's kind of the everyman, which is hilarious because he's a fucking Grey Guardian trained battle wizard. Yeah. So he's not a very everyman, but compared to them, bringing someone in that can contextualize how how important the PCs are and how bizarre and hilariously in many ways stupid they are.
Some of the things that they've done are as well. He feels that he's on the extreme of one particular situation, living down amongst a magically saturated group of beastmen in an attempt to keep that demon on the run and not die.
Well, like just the idea that he's dealing with a race that most of the Empire's not allowed to know exists and is super duper sneaky, and he's blended in so well, and literally the first thing that happens is some lady walks up to him and goes, "Your outfit's not that convincing. I can see right through it." And he's like, "What the fuck?"
I've been doing this for like 2 years, man.
So I think a lot of that, hopefully, and that's why I hope the episode will make like a good potential entry point for people that have never seen it, of giving that vibe of like when you're reading Go Check It Felix, and Felix going, "Holy fuck, what's that?" Or like, "Why the hell is this happening?" Hopefully that was conveyed in a lot of ways. But it also, I will say, it was very daunting, but in a great challenge way that I really enjoyed. Telling an entire character arc in only about 4.5-ish hours is really hard, especially when no one else at the table knows what it is, and you don't like. I don't want to stomp on anyone else. Like I want to feel like I'm a side character, not the main character. Which I think went over really well.
I think so too. I had zero concerns at the beginning because I am by general nature really chill.
I was gonna say zero concerns, and I'm sitting there like, he's never even seen me roleplay. He has no idea.
I had none because I know Sotek, and Sotek's great, and I also knew that Sotek had something that a lot of people don't have when they come to the table, and that's that he cared. He really cared. He wanted to do something that would be worthwhile of being there. He wanted to do the best that he could do. And I knew that that would also come hand in hand with a certain amount of, holy fuck, how do I do this? So I figured out right at the very beginning that I wasn't going to worry too much about trying to tackle any of that. I could have sat down with him and said, look, I understand first time streaming a game like this in this fashion, it can be super daunting. I could have spent all the time discussing that, but ultimately I didn't think it was worthwhile because it would highlight it. It would turn it into a thing. And it was already going to be enough of a thing for him anyway to deal with. And he had far more important things to deal with, which was how are we going to nail a character only being in a single episode and feeling like the story that was told was worthwhile him being there. Altogether, too many times I've seen special guest thingies or whatever, and they are either pre-scripted, completely pre-scripted. You totally know what's going to happen because they're doing their speech that they have to do for that special moment that they've clearly set up to be memorable.
Let me pull out my index card here.
Yeah, indeed. And that makes it feel much less like roleplay that you have at a real table. A real table where people are just chilling out and doing their thing and playing about and having fun. And our game is all about being as real a game as we possibly can have. It's just us doing stuff. It's not pre-scripted at all. It just goes. So down with that sort of thing. We're just going to go. But I also wanted to reinforce that I didn't want it to be he's turned up, he just gets to sit at the table for a session and then goes. Because what's the point? Other than it's super cool for him. Okay, that's super cool. He gets to be there, but that doesn't bring anything to the table. So we had to have a story. We had to have something that he could tell. And that's what our before the session went chat was. And it wasn't, we've been discussing this for months and how best to do this. And let's craft a clever story. It was much more of a, okay, I now know, as in me, how the last episode ended. This is clearly how we're going to make this character work. I didn't start my part of building the character until the last episode ended because I didn't know where we were going to be because we don't pre-script. But I did know where we were going to be at the end.
Because the original chat we had was that it was going to be a side episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Originally, we were going to be doing, I'm quite happy saying this out loud, I was going to be doing a Tales of Legend, Tales of Myth. And the next set of tales were going to be stuff from deep in the past and where I was really probably going to be pulling out something from Sigmar's time. And right up to about a week before we went, it was looking very likely because I wanted it to be a standalone episode. Something that anybody could watch. So whether you had watched any LAWhammer before or not, you could just watch it. It wouldn't matter. But as the episode beforehand, number 61, was coming to a conclusion, I could clearly see where it was heading to. I was like, no, I can wend this in, which means that we can just have him be part of the ongoing story. And I thought that would be much more fun. But that meant that when the episode ended, I had a different challenge, which was how do I tell a fresh story within the ongoing plot line? And that story ultimately was clearly the story that he had picked up when he was discussing different characters of big cornate doggies on me trail. I'm going to be using that. And I was like, yes, we can turn this into a story that has a beginning, middle, and end. At the beginning, there's something chasing him. Middle, look at the horror of what this actually is. We need to get rid of it. We've got rid of it. End, he brings it back to ensure that the PCs get away. That was brilliant. It was a very simple beginning, middle, and end, but you could see the process his character went through to get there. And it also wasn't something we decided should happen. It was something we said could happen, depending upon how it all unfolded.
No, well, yeah, so what's interesting is the original plan, or in my head, when I left the meeting with Andy, the original thought in my plan was that he was going to use Karanak, but he was going to use him to destroy the machine. But because of how everything ended up, because
so good.
I had no fucking idea that like the actual Karl Franz was going to allegedly the actual Karl Franz.
He had no idea what was going to happen in the episode.
So when that happened, that's when I went, oh shit, no, he has to use this because we're backed in a corner and like Katarina and Karl Franz are so weak. We can't fight our way out of this. We can't sneak our way out of this. I have to try and either kill Thankful or take his entire attention. And there's no better way to do that than to literally throw something in he can't kill.
And it was a cool moment. And that's ultimately what was so I wasn't setting that up to happen. Things were just happening, and they land where they land. And one of the joys of LAWhammer, from my perspective, is I never know how it's going to end. I never know how a single session is going to go. It's very rare that I have a session planned where I'm certain what the end is going to be. There are some sessions like that, though. And I'll give an example without going into any details so I don't cause spoilers. But there is an example of Father Leopold where at the end, Father Leopold reveals something.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and at the beginning of this episode, Alameda White is captured. For anyone who knows the episode, you'll know which episode I'm talking about. That episode was far more structured than any other episode we had, because it was important that the Leopold thing that had been set up the previous episode was nailed in a single episode, because I didn't want it to be something that was lingering around. So we got everything that had been set up in the previous episode being nailed in that episode, and we finished it off. That one was structured. This one wasn't. Sotek didn't know what was going to happen. He didn't know Calvary was going to be there.
Fucking idea what was going to happen.
He was playing the adventure as much as the players were playing the adventure, and getting to know each other was a core component of that. And I think that is what makes it more fun. And it's also what I think helps with the nerves. Because I remember right the way back at the beginning when I first started, when we were doing this all the way to episode 1, I was like, yeah, this will be no problem. I've GM before. Wrong! I opened my mouth and let me belly rumble at the beginning, where I did all the introduction about the various things that the stream was going to be all about. And I hadn't prepared any of that. None of that was pre-scripted. It just sort of came out. And I was like, having something to talk about really makes a big difference for coping with this shit, because you don't have time, because it's live. You don't have time to deal with, but can I do this? You just have to go. Just go and see where it lies.
Yeah, it's like for anyone out there that's like performed singing or instruments and stuff, like once you get going, you're good.
Yeah, exactly. And Sotek does this every week, day in, day out. Now, he doesn't roleplay every week, day in, day out on stream. Okay, but he does stream online day in, day out. So I had zero concerns that once he got started, he wouldn't just kind of go through.
The funniest thing is that like the being live was not what I was nervous about at all. It was like instead being in a roleplay group with people I had watched so much, and I was like, I love their dynamics so much. That was the part I was nervous about.
How am I going to fit in with that?
Yeah.
Is it even going to work? And should I speak out or not speak out? And I figured that the conversation we had beforehand was more than enough for me to go, yeah, this is going to be great. It's just going to be great. It's going to land and it's going to rock and it's going to be cool. And I think that by the end of it, it absolutely was.
Yeah, but it was very, very fun. It was. I will have infinite appreciation for Kath of giving him just so much shit to be like, what the fuck? Just shit. Like that was it. I don't think it was intentional in the slightest. The amount of like bombs she was dropping ever so casually was truly spectacular.
And it was also really useful for driving the episode forward, because it meant that Grimm was given extra material to work with.
Yeah.
He had things to immediately go, what is this? This means something. And for him to also conclude all of this stuff is important for one reason or another, and allows him to move from these are stupid kids to these are stupid kids that appear to get shit done to these are stupid kids that are getting through this.
Yeah,
what this bullshit, man. As he said,
it's got that cherry on top at the end of when he sees the whole Ume thing, being like, "These are stupid kids that have the fucking gods behind them."
Yeah,
what the hell is going on here?
Particularly when it comes to Ume and what she isn't doing, and that was it was good because it gave him a really nice changing, developing perspective of the characters, and by the end, coming to the conclusion of I have to support them. Because they're the ones who are going to get out of this. They're the ones who are going to move on to the next step. And he trusted them to probably do it.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, if anyone out there's ever watched Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, there's a really famous part of the show after they really decide for the first time to go after some of the homunculi, where the older characters are talking and realizing that they have to pull back because the kids are the ones that are going to have to do it. And it's that horrible realization of like, we're supposed to be the adults in the room, but the kids are just more powerful. For some reason, they have to be the ones to do it. And Grimm getting to be that character, but the tragedy being that he can't help them any further. Like he gives them that little fly. But that's
Fly,
that's
you
it.
fools.
Yeah, that's it. That's all he could do. For me, it's that he was able to simultaneously die with so many regrets, but all of them being the
maybe.
Like it'll have to be enough. It'll have to be enough.
Yeah, maybe we could get out of this. So, if I was to look at it from my side, I was exceedingly happy with how it landed. We ended up with a super.
Were there any like particular surprises for you that came up during the episode? Like any moments where something happened that was either in a good or middle or bad way, being like,
for me, everything is always somewhat of a surprise. As I've discussed, we don't script it. We don't know where it's going to go. The PCs have a direction I know they're going in, so I have everything that they might encounter there. But I don't decide one way or another how it will land. So, for example, when they're going into an area full of Skaven, that could have turned into a giant fireball bomb fight, for all we know. They could have crept in, they could have blown their way in, they could have done anything. And the Jaegers, the Storm Jaegers, are perhaps accurately named. They sometimes bring a storm with them. And things tend to sometimes go massively badly for them. And I didn't know how it was going to land. The device blowing up, it falling down, everything that occurred throughout the course of the episode was, I know this might sound a bit twee, but it was a surprise. I didn't know how it was going to land. I had no idea. And as we were getting closer and closer to the finish of the episode, and we overran with this one by approximately half an hour. Apologies to Dan if he ever watches this. Dan in particular, because Dan has he was waking up early in the morning next day. Poor guy. I felt really bad. But regardless, we had a story that needed to end, and as we were passing by what was the 11 o'clock hour, so about 11 p.m. UK time, and I was looking where they were. And they were sneaking around in the backs of where the machines were, looking through the cages and everything. I was like, this is obviously going to have to come to some sort of conclusion relatively soon. I had no idea how it was going to end. I didn't know if it was going to end beyond them all running out. But it was quite clear as it was coming out and as his Grimm's view was settling in place and he realized there was no way out. There just wasn't. And he came up with his conclusion to, yep, I'm summoning the demon right into the middle of this all by removing all of my shielding, taking away all the things that hide me from it coming in, and bellowing its name as loud as I possibly can.
If my voice hadn't been fucked, I would have actually done it. But I was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to hate myself if I do this.
And also all the headphone users out there go, Sotek, you're as bad as Andy. How could you do that to us? And he did that, allowing the PCs to creep out of an impossible situation. And then him turning around and desperately trying to do something to destroy the machines that were responsible for all the horror that was occurring from Thanquol's great plan, mastermind that he is, and realizing he flubbed it.
Yeah,
loved it. And then Andy came in and used one of his talents, which allows him to expend fate on other people's behalf, and turned it into the best spell he had ever done. And out came all of that shadow. The machines blow up, and everything goes boom at the end of the episode. And it was explosive, and I think super fitting if we take a look at how many of the episodes at one of those more epic moments for LAWhammer previously had ended with this really quite explosive group. They'd ended in explosions. And whether that was
a lot of shit.
Whether it was blowing up Castle Wittgenstein, whether it was the warehouse where they started at the beginning blowing up, whether it was the blowing ups that happened in Midnheim, the blowing ups that happened up in Skog, all these places had blown up. So it was super fascinating to see this also go. And that was fun. It thematically matched what had come before. It was allowing the recurring motif to recur one
I just actually thought about the fact that, because the only thing I thought about that up until this moment is like, oh man, I hope the PCs are far enough away that they're not totally fucked. Because for those that didn't see it, when we rolled how bad the explosion was on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being like the fucking worst, I rolled a 2. So it's a boom. It's like, a part of me went, hopefully the PCs are far enough to get away and all that stuff. But then I realized the actual real problem is that I forgot how close they'd move the machines to the surface.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a very good chance the sewers of Altdorf and maybe a couple of pieces of Altdorf are going to blow up.
So that's fun. And I think this is also important.
These PCs are nearly have set off like a bomb in every major city in the Empire.
They're the worst. They're genuinely the worst, but they generally survive as well. So I didn't know how that was going to end. I think that even the explosion, I think, is an important point to note. I didn't say, oh, it's a big explosion, everybody roll some dice for how much damage they take. Instead, I don't want to know how bad it's going to be. I like it to be a surprise for me as much as it is for everybody else, which is why I said roll a d10. And if it's low, not so good. If it's high, then the explosion is contained. Your PCs are going to get away. It's all kind of good. They rolled a 2. That explosion is bad. And that's hilarious.
But I didn't roll a 1. I didn't roll a 1.
You didn't roll a 1. And if it had been an 8, it would probably be worse.
Yeah.
As mentioned during stream. So all of this is a surprise to me, to go back to the point.
That's good.
And that is why I find it entertaining and always entertaining as a GM. Too many GMs I've seen at various points when they're playing almost fix everything. Because they've got a story they want to tell, or because the explosion is a fixed explosion, isn't it? It does 2d10 plus 10 damage. Okay, so that's an explosion. Everybody roll a 2d10 plus 10. Is anybody dead? No, nobody's dead. We're all fine. No, I'm much rather allowing everything to be quite random in terms of these.
Which makes it so much more narrative.
It does. Yeah. And it means that we're telling a story that I don't understand how it's going to unfold either. And that makes it much more interesting for me. I've told The Enemy Within as a story, I suppose. Like 20, 30 times. I've only completed it end to end, like 3. Difficult to confirm whether that one counts as completing or not. Let's say 2 for certain. I will change that number at a later date again, because, hey, memory. But going all the way to the end it's a time sink. But every time I do it, it's been completely different. And that's a core component of keeping it interesting for me.
Yeah, they'll get a Steam achievement when they blow up Nuln. Yeah. They'll get their gold achievement for blowing up every major city outside of Talabheim.
I mean, they've been as players in Nuln more than once, and there was an explosion in Nuln. They've already got it.
Oh, okay. Well, then they just need Talabheim. They want the platinum.
Talabheim is the one they need.
So they've got bronze, silver, gold. If they want platinum, they're going to blow up Talabheim.
There was one giant explosion in Nuln at the end of one episode because of, I think it was Ed again, wasn't it?
Probably. It
was Ed. Or was it? Ooh, I'd have to go back and check that episode. Somebody in the chat might remember.
This is a good question. How has it been different playing with LAWhammer and rules to other roleplay? So, I really like a lot of elements of the LAWhammer system. I pretty heavily cannibalized it for my own use as a GM, where I've stolen a lot of, which is what you just do. I've taken a lot of the ideas that I really, really like from Andy's system and incorporated into my own. The fast success system is something I personally don't use, but worked really well for the stream. There's a part of me that really likes it, and there's a part of me that really doesn't simultaneously. Of that, it's very quick, and it also makes it where you want to roll as high as you possibly can without going over the threshold.
Get close to your skill as
possible. Which is very exciting. Like, that element of it is actually really cool. The part of me that tends to like it less is the part of me that feels like it gives too big numbers too easy in some ways. But
and interestingly, stats on gives big numbers less frequently.
But like it
funny.
Yeah, it's quick. And it felt really good. It felt super good. Andy did a really good job with my character sheet as well. It was like super easy to read. And
I'm glad to hear that because it was done fast.
Yeah,
you can see it online now if you want. Go check it up yourself. But yeah, it was done fast.
So like luckily he had it where like I didn't need to constantly be looking through my talents, that's probably the biggest fear when approaching like a pre-done sheet is like, oh god, what are the talents going to be? I enjoyed it a lot. The biggest thing for me, and I'm not saying this because he's next to me, it's just a fact. Of that, I've played with a lot of GMs, and Andy is such a unique caliber of just such high quality GMing. Of that, the way I would put it is that when you're playing in a session with a lot of GMs, and you get into a situation where you're like, "Oh, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this?" It'll a trap that I think GMs can fall into a little too easily is that they can tell their party is looking for a solution to a problem, and they'll eventually give them one. Like they'll ask a question, GM will be like, "Oh yeah, I guess that's a thing." So like a good example is when we were talking about the trying to mess with Thanquil's device that's projecting him and like shooting him with an arrow or whatever, and it felt very much like Andy had a perfect visualization of what this thing was, and every way we tried to tackle it, there just wasn't a good way to do it. And that's it. There just wasn't a good way to do it. And I feel like almost every other GM I've ever been with would have said, oh, well, there's a little thing you could do here. Or they're like, they would have given us that little thing.
That's interesting.
I like that it ended up being impossible.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember having a conversation very similar to this about GMing in a panel once, where one of the other panelists said something along the lines of, I think it's absolutely essential that you always yes and your way as a GM. So whenever someone says something, you say, yes, that's fine. Let's do that. And this is the complication you may face or whatever. It is never impossible. Everything can be done. You should always have the dice roll at the end. And I was like, yeah, no. I disagree. Okay, if my party member jumps off a cliff, I'm not going to let him do a fly roll. He's going to fall. And it's that simple. And he was like, no, I don't mean that. I mean, if there's a situation in front of you, I was like, no, but you do. You actually mean that. I'm simplifying it right down to its nuts and bolts, which is sometimes party members, your party as they're playing, will attempt something that they can't do. And they will want to be able to do it, much like in real life. There's lots of things I want to be able to do. Speak French. Not happening. Not happening. Okay, no matter how many times someone does a roll with me, I'm not speaking French. I might say bonjour, but that's going to be about it. I do not speak French. I can read it to a degree, and it's sort of helped with Expedition 33, but not really. If you've been playing that computer game, if you haven't, it's pretty good. Go take a check out of it. So there are certain things that you're just not going to be able to do because you're too short, you're too tall, you're too weak, you're too whatever. And I think that's okay. Because certain things you can't happen. If you jump off a cliff, you're going to fall.
Well, and because role-playing is a creative experience, a collective creative experience, creativity, we just know this, tends to get more interesting when there are constrictions. And you have to work within the constrictions. Of that, when that idea didn't work, we kind of talked about it. Instead of trying to just keep forcing it, going, okay, you know what? That didn't work. We got to do something else. And that led to a really fucking cool scene.
It really did.
Which rather ironically resulted in the thing we were trying to do happening anyway.
It was great.
Yeah. But so that would be probably the biggest thing for me is that Andy is such a unique style of GM that I think it comes so heavily from experience. And also he has a very weird, unique brain. With all love.
It's not unfair. I will take that as a compliment.
Yeah, that I think a lot of GMs would really benefit from watching LAWhammer and genuinely taking notes from Andy's set. Because I think the biggest thing for me that I've implemented in my own campaigns is that you don't have to have a physical map. You don't have to have physical tiles. But what you as the GM need to have is that when your players are in a situation, you need to have a strong visualization of what's going on and what the situation is.
Yeah.
So when they suggest something, you're not going, ooh, I didn't think of that. I guess that's a thing. You go, does that work with what I've
there?
Does that work with what I've done? No, then no.
Yeah. And to a degree, I do exactly the same thing with the NPCs as well. NPCs are as powerful as they need to be. Not powerful to match the PCs.
It wasn't.
It was one I was certain it was said. Frickin' Eden is blowing things up. Always funny. Thanks very much for clarifying that one. So NPCs are as powerful as they should be, not as they need to be to match PCs or to be combated by the PCs. Meaning that when you go up against, say, for example, a very powerful wizard, you're screwed unless you're clever, unless you do something that means you're not screwed. Or if they, when I get to my rolls, just repeatedly roll fumbles, which can sometimes happen. Particularly, I don't know why, but my Skaven have been the most unlucky. Skaven,
except for when they're not.
Yeah, but yeah, quite. And that's fun. One of the great joys, in fact, of the system as we use it is that 1 in 10 rolls are a critical or a fumble.
Oh yeah, the Wolfram system is so much better than the D&D system.
And 1 in 10 gives you something dramatic happening. meaning that you tend to find if you've got yourself a combat or anything else going, that every other round you've got a critical or a fumble on average. And that's fun because things are happening and the story beats are popping off in a variety of ways. And the second you add something like fortune points on top of that allow you to re-roll, suddenly the odds actually increase of you getting yourself something big happening. So for all I say, yeah, my Skaven are constantly fumbling, it's actually odds on to be expected because that's kind of how it works. But all of that aside, what we were discussing?
What it was like to play in the... unless you're going back to the point before that.
No, I wasn't. I was going to say about NPCs. I remember now. All of that aside, on the NPCs being as powerful as they should be, and people having to come up with their own clever answers for how to resolve that. It's not just that the NPCs are as powerful as they should be. They do what they should do. So I don't have NPCs sitting there to be, for example, lore dump exposition characters, although some of them end up being that because that's what they would do.
Yeah, there are people like that.
And there are people who are like that. There are people who can't stop talking about shit and never shut up. We can't help ourselves, or calf, just dropping things in. So as I said, I think in a completely different stream very recently.
I have a good example.
Yes, go.
So a really good example for GMs, and I did this in my campaign, which I know Hawk's one of my players, so you can back this up. One that I did that will shock, I think, PCs for the first time they experience it. And I saw it for the first time watching LAWhammer of the PCs. If you go back and watch early LAWhammer, they basically get in a room with a judge. And the judge knows them and is very friendly with one of them. He knows Alamanowith, and they're like old buddies. And some of the PCs just can't shut the fuck up. They're just constantly talking. And they're not talking out of character. They're talking in character and making little remarks. And the judge finally just... They're being rude. And he's in a place... Like, think about if you're in an actual courtroom. The judge would be like, shut the fuck up and get out of my courtroom. Or I'll throw your ass in jail. And Andy, as the judge, just loses it on the PCs and kicks their asses out. They completely fuck up this connection that they had.
Yeah.
There are immediate punishments. And most GMs wouldn't want to do that because they're like scared of spooking their players or feeling like they're being unfair.
Fuck up.
Yeah, which granted, as a GM, it comes with experience to like, you know, your players are going to be fine.
Yeah.
And so like for my PCs, I did the same thing of like they get in a room with a judge, and if any of them are trying to kind of like do things that a judge would not allow, because I'm in the judge's mind of I'm in control of the room. I'm a little bit of a control freak, especially because this is supposed to be kind of a casual thing. I'm tired. I don't actually want to be here. I want to go home.
Yeah.
And then they're fucking talking back to me. Fuck you people.
Quite get out. So NPCs who act like NPCs, situations that are genuinely difficult. And because Warhammer offers one thing that almost all other games don't offer, that's fine. And that is, in Warhammer, you have your extra lives.
Yeah.
But they're not just extra lives. They're also the ability to potentially get support, or alternatively, do very well in a seemingly impossible situation because you can fix dice rolls, or you can call in cavalry, or whatever else you want to call it. Meaning that Warhammer gives you this lovely option of both making it impossible and giving PCs a route through the impossible situation.
The last thing I'll say about playing with LAWhammer group specifically that I love a lot, and it's something I've taken from LAWhammer into my own campaigns, both as a player and a GM, is failure is okay. And it's actually really critical to storytelling.
Yeah, it
of
is.
Like when we were playing, literally at the start of the stream, Grimm opens with trying to cast a spell and he just can't fucking do it. He just cannot get a spell off. Even though he's got like practically an 80 something in doing it, and he's casting the simplest spell he casts every fucking day. And you may look at that and go, oh, well, that's stupid. But no, it does, it
stress
immediately does storytelling of he's terrified. He knows Karanak is already on their ass. And it's funny because it also gave, if you watch the stream, it gives Andy the cue to say, oh yeah, Karanak's right fucking on you because you're fucking this up. So of course he's right on you, and that's why you're fucking this up. Instead of it just being the biggest thing is if your players are failing rolls, make that part of the story. Don't just be like, you failed. Okay.
Yeah. Failure. In fact, in general, I would, if you're playing roleplay games, accept that failure is a good thing because it tells good stories. And failure can sometimes be success as well. In that by failing a thing, it allows a certain outcome which has someone else step in to do a thing which turns into success. It's just all part of the ongoing story that's slowly but surely unfolding. And bad stuff happening is as much fun as good. In fact, I would argue for all the players may often go, this is the fucking worst. I can't believe I failed this thing. Everything's going to go wrong. Often happens. That can turn into some of the most memorable moments they will have as they look back in the campaign. Do you remember that time when it all went wrong? And they say, oh, hell yeah. And they laugh about it because they got out of it one way or something else happened or whatever. And as a GM, as a DM, whatever else you want to call yourself, your job is to just basically tell cool stories and for everyone around the table to have a laugh. That's what it's all about. Everyone having fun. And fun means a lot of different things to different people. And it means a lot of different things according to the game you're playing. Sometimes fun is dark and grim and horrible and people hanging by noosed necks and people getting flayed. That sounds awful. But within that particular game, that might be fun. Another one will be you're just a bunch of cartoons going around having a bit of a laugh. That's fun in a very different way. Fun, it does not mean success at all. And for even the most successful games, it doesn't. And it's one of the reasons why systems that give you nothing but success, and it's just degrees of how much you've done well, are often less satisfying. Because you don't have those moments where your big-ass heroes fail. And you'll find that the vast majority of the fiction that we consume doesn't have all of our heroes always succeeding unless it's the most weird gung-ho.
It'd be boring. It'd be boring.
And even then, yeah, it's boring. They need to have that second act twist where it all goes wrong. They need to have that moment where they've made an incorrect decision or they've attempted to tackle a thing and the other guys beat them up or whatever it might be. There's always that moment where they fail. And there is a few systems out there where failure isn't actually a part of the system. The whole idea of it is that you just kind of always succeed. And that is ultimately not as much fun for storytelling.
Yeah, I saw a very cheeky, funny comment. I don't know if I'm going to be able to grab it earlier.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, here it is from Muppet. I understand the local weird language. So, funny enough, I have a much... the only accents I've struggled with that I've been here for, I tend to have more problems much further south than I do. For whatever reason, and I hear this isn't actually unusual, as an American, Scottish people I tend to find easier to understand than a lot of English people down south.
Sure.
Whatever. But the hardest for me is definitely, and I'm not saying this against them in particular or whatever, but I've spoken with a good number of French people this trip, and they have a really bad habit of mumbling their English. Like they talk very soft.
It's just how they talk.
Yeah, with a very strong accent that makes them fucking impossible to understand. Like for me, it's the you know what it is about Scots? They're loud. They talk loud, so I can easily hear the words and I can make it out and understand it. When people talk soft, it drives me fucking crazy because I can't make out what they're saying. Because the accent just muddles it further. So yeah. Though, as far as language goes, there have been plenty of words said where I'll go, what the fuck are y'all talking about?
we have our own unique way of expressing English, which is strongly influenced by Scots, which many of you would just say is English with a Scottish accent. It kind of isn't. Where we have a whole host of relatively unique words, many of which are sourced all the way back to often like Viking invasions and words that we pick up. Like bairn for baby, for example, many of which can be sourced back if you go through the etymology all the way back to various Viking invasions in the past. But yeah, and on top of that, we've got a bunch of just like, cheerio. That's a way of saying goodbye in Scotland. And that comes from Gaelic.
I go home next week. So by this time next week, I will be home, I'm pretty sure. But I leave on Monday. So I leave Monday here and I arrive home Tuesday because I'm going like forward in time instead of backwards in time or whatever.
Time zones.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'll be home next Tuesday, Texas time, though I'll probably, be resting for a bit. We'll see. I mean, I feel great and but you never know with like jet lag and other weird shit. But yeah, overall this was genuinely the highlight of my trip. The roleplay experience was fantastic. Andy, I would kill to have a GM like Andy on a regular basis. Which, if my normal GM was watching this, that's not a slight against you. I'm just,
What have I said?
But it was an incredible experience, and felt that the thing that I wish more GMs would do is challenge your players.
Yeah. I remember having this conversation.
Don't worry about making me happy. Worry about telling me a story.
Yeah. I actually remember having this very conversation back in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4's development meetings, where the idea was effectively a point was raised. How about you just don't fail? And it was actually brought up as a design point, and I said no. I was hard on it. I'm kind of autistic. Kind of. There's no kind of. I was just like, no.
If only y'all knew.
You have no idea.
He's being, yeah.
I say it in the nice, kind of, a bit, but yeah, I couldn't get. I had to express why this would not work, and the core ethos that Warhammer requires is that, in many respects, failure is a core component of what it is. The opposite, for example, went into Soulbound, where success, goddamn big ass, mighty heroes, was at the core of what that was. But Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay didn't do that. And I was quite happy, particularly defending that corner, because I thought it was a core component. But not just for Warhammer, but for storytelling. It is absolutely essential that your characters have challenges that they don't necessarily overcome. And that was something that in the design meeting was not really understood by all at that time, because as far as many were concerned, that overcoming the challenges was what the game was all about. It's like, yes, in many respects it sort of is, but how and failure is a core component of the stories you're telling. There's lots of routes through these things. So yeah, it was a good conversation.
So I don't mean challenges in trying to make things super duper. So what I mean by this is, A, good for your players, because that in and of itself is hilarious.
Yep.
B, it's also fine occasionally to have things that they can't pull from the jaws. There's nothing to pull.
Yeah. And that might sound strange, but again, just keep it into very simple terms. If your players jump off a cliff, there's no bullshit way of getting out of that. They're dying.
Now, granted, your players might just be a good enough group of role players. They're not stupid enough to try something like that.
Exactly. But having said that, fate points, you're going to survive. Warhammer has routes through all of the impossible bullshit that can potentially...
Okay, if you're the one that miscasted and blew up, yeah, no, that's on you. In which case, that's just dice being fucking dice. Your players are lucky. Good for them.
Actually, genuinely hilarious. Yeah, totally. And just as
okay, you got it. Afternoon, Andy. Can you say why Alana wished to die rather than escape, or was her warp zone exposures too far along that she was a time bomb? The wizard in the cage. I don't know if you actually want to answer it.
Her name wasn't Alana.
Oh,
let's start with that. That was Tochter Grumfeld.
Oh, yeah.
I'm assuming that's who we're discussing.
I can't imagine who else it'd be. Because
indeed.
That fits the bill.
And why did she want to die? I don't want to necessarily explain one point. Let's
summarize.
Let's summarize what was openly known. She considered that she was absolutely tainted, and that she was certain to... not from Watchdog. I'm just double checking that it was Tochter, but yes, Tochter. Tochter Grumfeld, who is the matriarch of the Jade Order, and has been for a wee while, depending upon which book we go with.
Hawk, I stole that directly from LAWhammer. Yeah, one of our players. I took your stress system. He failed horribly on his stress. So he got like a fuck ton of stress. And then we. Sorry, finish your story. I'll explain this because it's a fun story. So I'll explain after.
Tochter. So Tochter, yeah, and indeed. I didn't name that character. It's a character that was named, I think, originally by Marian von Stauffer.
Good old GW German.
Yeah, Marian von Stauffer. I'm pretty sure named.
That's such a cool name.
Yeah, Marian von Stauffer. Yeah, it's a great name. I'm pretty sure Marianne named that first in the Realms of Sorcery book for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition, where Tochter, I think, was first named. And in many respects, that name was a reference and a title as much as it was her actual name. in that she was the daughter of the Jade Order, and in many respects represented it in an interesting way. And I thought that was all right. Of all the bullshit Warhammer names that I have seen, some of which I've created, it wasn't the worst.
Okay, back to the actual question.
So, Tofter, just to cut it down without explaining anything, was in a place where she knew that she was very dangerous. Let's just leave it at that. And she chose death over the alternative. And she wanted to die as swiftly as possible, lest she be used.
There you go.
I think that's the best way to put it.
So to answer this, because it's kind of a funny little thing of, so Andy developed a system that you can find on his Patreon for free, and it's super great, and I recommend it, called the Stress System, which I think the most recent is the 1.1 version, so make sure you grab that one. And it's great. I essentially used it to replace the slots on the character sheets for resilience and resolve. I replaced that with stress instead.
No bad idea.
And basically, what it is it's kind of like corruption, where it has a threshold, but it's about mental events, experiencing severe trauma, whether mental, emotional, but, affecting your mind. And so the funny aspect of the story, which I'll say the names of things, but I'm not going to say exactly what they are, because Andy will get what they are. But if you're a GM, you'll get it. But if you've not played through it, you won't know what these are. But I'm building up the Teufel Terror. It's much like the Dark.
Bring that one up for you, Moritz. Is it like Stress and Darkest Dungeon? I had been playing Darkest Dungeon
very similar.
2 months before I decided I was going to write it. And Darkest Dungeon did something that I thought was really good, which was to take mental health, which is ultimately a very difficult topic to discuss in roleplay games without getting very close to real world issues and turning real world issues into negatives. I come from a household that is full of, let's say, mental health issues. And to say that their characters are thus, as they as people are thus flawed in a variety of ways, was just not what I was wanting to build. I was wanting to build something that felt like it was a fun way of tackling the horrors of the Warhammer world and what it does to you without basically saying, that real world issue that you currently face, I'm going to make you have to face that again in game all the time because of the things you do, which isn't fun. But Darkest Dungeon was fun, and it was fun in a cool way. So it takes some of that, and it does indeed sprinkle it around a bit.
Yeah, but so building up the Teufel Terror, and one of my PCs who's like brand new to everything Warhammer and kind of role-playing in general, I had the misfortune of kind of sighting it one night and rolled for stress. Actually saw it killing someone. And roll for stress and just did not roll good. So he had a really bad reaction to it. So it got him close to his threshold, but not quite over it. And then I took one of the hooks from the Temple of Shalia, the one about the old woman.
Yep.
And so they're taking her on a wagon back to her farm, being nice, good little PCs. They didn't have to do it. It was a total thing they could have easily avoided. They're like, no, we'll do the right thing. And, she starts mutating on the way back to the journey. And once again, being goody two-shoes, instead of just being like, fuck this, we're out. They're like, oh, no, we gotta, because they had a dwarf with them. The dwarf was like, no, I gave my word that I would take her back to her house. So she's going back to her house. And I basically turned the house into the, if anyone's ever read the Color from Space, the Lovecraft story.
No, I have read that. Yeah,
the one where there's like the thing in the well. Yeah. So, but for mine, there's warpstone shit in the well. So they get there, and of course, the cow and the goat that were there have mutated horribly and are locked inside a thing, and they break out, and they have this fight with it. And of course, the whole situation is so just awful that they take another stress test. He fails again.
Of course he does.
But the funny thing was that because this experience put him over the threshold, despite the fact the Teufel Terror gave him like, I don't know how many stress points, but like 95%, this was the actual catalyst.
Yeah.
So this is where he had to roll on the stress. And he ended up rolling afraid. And so we kind of just had a fun chat about him. We ended up determining that he would be afraid of farm animals. Which sounds silly, but
some farm animals are terrifying.
Well, yeah. But it's like, but you encounter so many of them So it's like, yeah, this is gonna come up a lot.
That's cool.
But anyway, so yeah, it was a fun story.
So Lucen, Restress, what do you feel about some of the game design philosophies that are strongly against mechanizing mental health issues? I agree to a degree. And I agree that for the vast majority of games, they're not needed. But when you're dealing with a game that is all about the mind-shattering reality that the PCs are now confronting, Call of Cthulhu, for example, then there is a reason to go, how can we do this right? I think Call of Cthulhu doesn't. Now, Mike, sorry if you're watching this, apologies. But I think it doesn't because it's talking about sanity points and going insane and saying that people that pick up certain things are insane. And it almost... It almost makes normal people look like they failed in a variety of weird ways.
That's funny.
And it doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah.
And I think Darkest Dungeon gives a strong way of showing how you can show the mind-shattering nature of the things that they've encountered and how it can change how people act to the world around them without having to mechanize real-world mental health issues in the same way. You make it a part of the cool stories that you're telling. And if you can do that right and sensitively and not say that it is bad or to make it a pejorative thing, then you can really create something. The Stress was the first attempt to do that. It's worth going checking those stress rules. If I do them again, I'll almost certainly do them slightly differently. They work. They work in a similar fashion to the existing Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay rules, which is why, broadly speaking, I left them as they were, because there's something that's understandable and they crib on a system that's already in the setting, so it's not difficult to take it on board if you wish to do so. But I don't like mechanizing certain parts of mental health, even though mental health is a core component of some games. And those games where it is a core component, I think it should be done, but it has to be done sensitively.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that's loosely where I stand on all of that. What time are we at? We've got about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, we can do another 10 minutes.
Another 10 minutes. You got any questions for the last 10 minutes? Do pop them up because we are going to be closing off very soon.
Yeah, Arms of Falls Black Horror would definitely be a pretty high level stress, and possibly actually Dark Match. I'd probably do Corruption Test as well.
Yeah, Corruption as well.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Yeah, one of the things the game's actually missing at the moment is a strong idea for how Dar corrupts, not just chaos and mutation and that sort of thing, but how it turns people a bit bleak and grim.
Yeah, they kind of tackled it in the Winds of Magic book, but they focused too much on the environment, not enough on people.
Yeah, I agree. And it needs a bit more. All the way back in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1, they'd already established a mechanic for afflictions and what they can do to people who use the darker types of magic in that particular game. So we're talking necromancy or demonology and those equivalents. And that system's super easy to bounce over and potentially use, but tie that through to Dar and tie it through to witches using magic that hasn't been properly...
It's just exposure.
It's just exposure to bad stuff. So, yeah.
What are the damn Grey Wizard Oaths?
Well, you're going to have to figure that out for your own game, I'm sorry to say. But they're freaking tight in my game.
Andy, is there anyone in particular you'd like to have on one day for LAWhammer?
I mean, like to have on.
As a guess, specifically a guess.
Yeah.
So a one and done.
I don't really think like that. And by that, I mean, I don't think, oh, I look out there and I think I'd really like that person to come on. How can we make that happen? That
Someone's super famous.
That tends to be other people who do that. I mean, there's the obvious. I mean, if you're doing live action role play in front of a camera, then you go, oh, well, you would have Mark Mercer on, don't you? Because that's the obvious choice. And I've met Matt. When he was last over in Edinburgh, we had a big sit-down and powwow. I've done maps for Matt. Matt's a great guy. That absolutely makes a certain amount of sense. And sure, if Matt's out there and want to join us, I definitely wouldn't say no. But I'm also really very happy just ticking along with the people that we have. I don't feel this desperate desire to have famous people on and do famous people stuff.
I got one.
Yes, go.
If you had the chance to have, as a side stream in the past, have Dara's person make an appearance.
Oh yeah, that'd be really nice, Caitlin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I feel like you're suddenly dancing. Remember, Dara? I'm like, shit, yes, fuck.
She gets brought up a lot.
Yeah, so she does. Yeah, that would be super fun. I should actually reach out to Caitlin. See if we can get on at some point.
Would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be a fun past stream thing. Because Caitlin messed around with our PCs quite a lot in the pre-stream stuff. It'd be fun to flash back to that. Because Dara, when she was wee, before all the events happened later up at Carrick Skoog, that'd be fun. I see someone suggested Matt Berry. We don't need Matt Berry, we've got Ed. he comes out with the random bullshit that Matt would almost certainly bring in there as well. So yeah, funny.
There's so much fucked up stuff in Warhammer. I talked to a Call of Cthulhu friend of mine that sounded weird, and she said Warhammer was the more messed up one.
Hey, Moritz, to a degree, you're not wrong, because it's taken on everything that Call of Cthulhu sort of offers, and that's Cthulhu in general, the Cthulhu mythos. And then it adds to it with a whole bunch of other random shit. So yeah, you're not wrong there.
Can you tell me what the keys to the Bright Wizards are?
Yeah, this is again going to be a LAWhammer version. We've got an entire set of keys all the way up to Patriarch. There's 7 levels. Each of those have got 7 keys.
Patreon?
It's not anywhere at the moment. Oh. We've only got the first, I think, 4 levels fully written out for. Basically, I make what is needed for Dan. Okay, so I haven't done all of them. I just know they exist. And even Thyras Gorman, who's the patriarch of the Bright College, is also pursuing his patriarchal keys right at the very top, doing things, because there's that constant urge to push forward, to keep that aggressive momentum moving.
Bug him on Discord and maybe he'll write them down for you.
Yeah. Bug me in Discord. That's not a bad idea.
Could you see a 1776 Bolivar Revolution, the various New World colonies forming a new countries? Eventually, yes. Now, I will say that would be one of the things if I were...
he did bug me on Discord.
No, you misunderstand. You have to religiously hammer him on Discord. You have to annoy him enough that he goes, fine, I'll fucking do it, just leave me alone.
And then I can't stop, and it's all I do.
Yeah. So yeah, see, you can't stop. You have to keep coming until he gives in. Yeah, it's trust me, I get it. It's rough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could absolutely see a New World Colony revolution happening. I think that would be a natural evolution of the story. But
there's a lack of them.
Yeah, they're not well explored, and there's so little info on them. And yeah, it just is what it is. It's one of those things that I never understood why GW didn't make a Warhammer equivalent to like the Caribbean, where stories like this could be much more easily explored. Because Lester is such a hostile fucking hellhole. The GW is really bad about islands. They're terrible about islands.
I don't disagree with that.
So hopefully that's something they'll be better about as the old world continues to expand, because they've added in a ton of islands next to Bretonia that did not used to be there.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens.
Yep. All of that.
LAWhammer, curious about your take on the sometimes stated opinion that strong wizards having very low fumble chance, 99-0-0 on a scale above 95, contradicts Warhammer Magic being dangerous.
Okay, so that's a fair point. That's a 1 in 50 chance. 1 in 50 chance each time. If you're doing your standard session, where you might get 2 spells popping off, that means what? 1 in 25 per session, which means 25 sessions for a single fumble. That's bullshit. And the rules that were presented inside the core book were supposed to be the first starter part that we were then going to go into the realms of magic section and show how magic is always dangerous. I had a whole setup for how that was going to work, for what was going to be the equivalent of our Realms of Sorcery book, which eventually turned into, I presume, their Winds of Magic book at a later date. Their Winds of Magic book, if anything, made magic safer in some degrees, rather than looking at it and saying, when you're doing the big shit, big shit comes with danger. So I think my answer on this one is, yes, it's correct. There is an issue, and it should have been fixed, and it wasn't. Yeah,
to give you some quick ideas for anyone out there that is struggling with it, I would emulate tabletop, where the more magic you're dealing with, the more difficult it is. And you get to the point where a crit is a miscast, because it's so much magic.
So much magic. And that's exactly how it was supposed to be.
Because then it makes every crit is dangerous.
Yeah. And every single time you roll a double, shit is happening. And that was going to be written straight into the rules. And explanation for why it wasn't the case with the core arcane spells, what the bigger spells did, the dangers involved with it, how those dangers constantly changed according to the strength of the Winds of Magic. around you. And that was the thing that wasn't in the core book. The core book was just, this is how you cast a spell. And the Winds of Magic book, at least as I was imagining it, was, and this is what happens when you cast a spell in all of these environments. Things go bad because magic is dangerous. And this is the stuff that can happen. So my overall opinion is I agree. And it should have been fixed. And it's not so much it should have been fixed. It should have been written. The idea was it was always going to be written.
Yeah.
And it just never happened.
Path of the Old Ones, would it follow a different group of PCs?
That is uncertain. I mean, who knows how many will survive? If they all die, then the answer will be, fuck knows. If only one of them dies, then that one definitely won't be there. I don't know the answer to that.
Has Skaven versus Bretonnia ever been explorers getting the attempt to clone their king? Not on LAWhammer. Not yet.
No.
After the end... well, Andy finally revealed the oath made by the Knights Panther. That was very cruel of you. Did Kath at least get to know them?
Kath does not yet know what she's sworn to.
Oh, that's very funny, actually.
Okay, Kath was very disappointed to find that out, and she was like, so do I get to know yet? No. What have I sworn to do? What if I do something that contradicts it? You won't, you can't. What? So why have I sworn to do it? Trust me, not an issue. So Kath doesn't know it yet. Birdie does, and Kath doesn't. And sometimes that is a separation that's required, because the second Kath knows, she will not be able to help but work
especially Kath.
knowing what she knows, which means that sometimes she will do something differently because she knows something. And it's important sometimes to withhold information to ensure characters act the way that they would. And upon saying that to Kath, she was like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you mean, so when she's talking to Grimm, she goes, did you know the oath of Knights Panther?
Yeah, quite.
That's super funny.
Yeah.
Let's see. If you clone Andy, how much more Warhammer stuff could we go? Or they'd just be constantly...
They'd all be ill. They'd be infecting each other in a big infection
clone
circle.
Andy, just cure Andy, okay?
Cure me, that'd be lovely. Oh, cure to diabetes would be the best thing in the world. I would be happy.
Yeah, EJ, I agree. Yeah.
EJ Cruising, not only do I agree that should happen, they can't be re-rolled.
Yeah, it should be spooky.
There should be issues. And in my version of Magic, there absolutely is. But Elric's still working through the lower ends, so I don't need to worry about it too much.
I would, for me, it'd have to be a certain level of spell. Like, there are safe spells that are small enough that if you crit, hey, great, you just have really good control over it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, no. And the reason for that is because it's not broadly known just how much Gur is kicking about that place. There's not Gur sitting all over the surface of Middenheim. It's down deep below and in the well, if you will, of magic that comes from the great old one artifact that's down below. The fire at the top, in many respects, burns it away. Think of it like gas, or like an oil rig sitting on the edge where they've got the outlet of gas just burning away constantly. It's like that. So the great big burning of Gur that's freezing up at the top there is what would happen. Now, if you got down into the worst of it and you were using amber magic, then you'd have an issue. But generally speaking, no.
Hey, EJ, as long as you're being fair, as long as you let them know and don't, I wouldn't surprise them with it because that would be rude. I would let them know. And there are things that you can do, like ingredients are there for a reason. Of making magic safer.
Yes, and that was the whole point of them, and it's been sort of lost, sadly, because nobody sat down. I mean, I would have done it my way if I was producing the magic book, and I was no longer there, so someone else needed to come in and take a look at it and say, here are the existing rules, what am I going to do to ensure that they match what Warhammer offers? And they didn't choose to make it more dangerous. They chose to just add a little bit extra more. So, yeah, it's kind of not there.
The Path of the Old is just a boneless webway. I mean, well, we've talked about this a lot in the Albion stream of that. It's kind of more like the servants' quarters or the servants' pathways. It was not intended to be the shiny gift to their most favored Eldar children. It's the crappy shit the Lizardmen are using to get around and fix things.
Yeah, I think the answer to this one is if you take a look at what the broader webway is over in 40k in comparison to what the Path of the Old Ones is, the answer is no. They are quite different, but really similar.
Yeah, well, they're both old one tech. So
they absolutely are.
I'm sorry to say, no way the Jaegers and their bickering survived Lustra, even less the Court of Naggaroth would be fucking hilarious. I'm not gonna lie.
Christ, just imagine them. I don't know if you should do that. Zap!
Yeah. I mean, hell, just the Court of the Phoenix King. the amount of ridicule they would get.
Oh, it'd be awful.
High elves are mean girls.
High elves are
like
awful.
dialed up to 1,000. Do you prefer the old, more bestial Descenti Gorger design with the creepily long limbs, or the newer, more bone tomahawky caveman? I like both for different things.
Yeah, and I see no reason why both can't be the case. One of the big things that I really dislike about LAWhammer, about Warhammer in general, is that they forget that breeds, races, different groups exist within single species.
Yeah, because for me, it's like the long limb ones would be the ones that appear in tunnels that were too small for them to survive in otherwise, so they adapted. Yeah. Whereas the bigger meteor ones are maybe a more natural, because the newer ones do look much more ogre-y. Like I look at that and go, oh yeah, I see there's an ogre there. Whereas the old ones, you look and you go, that's an ogre?
And that's cool too.
Yeah, which has its own strengths.
Yeah.
So I just see them as different adaptations.
Yep, agreed completely.
Dude, that's a spicy. I'm not going to answer that. That's a spicy question.
That is a spicy question. Would the Rookery ever go? Look, no.
Oh, you're going to read it?
No, I'll read it.
Okay.
Shadisian's done it. Would the Rookery be going for a Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 5 license? There's no license to have. The license is held by Cubicle 7. So the answer to that is no. If the license came up, could I write that game? Yeah, and I could write a really good version of that game. Wouldn't be an issue at all. But as it stands, the answer is a very firm no.
Actually, I'm curious if you know about this. This is just a random question. When a license does come up, does GW tend to be the ones that do the shopping, or do people come to them?
It depends entirely. But when the 4th edition came up, they did shopping. They invited several people over, and Cubicle 7 won that license.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And with that, we're out of time.
We're out of time. Well, look at that. A thing has occurred. We've ticked over. So first, I'd like to say thanks all for turning up. That was lovely. And apologies, of course, for the first 6 minutes worth of technical shenanigans.
I only wish, as part of that bullshit, we had caught the spider, because that was
that spider before we went live. Literally,
that was a huge fucking. It was just part of that whole bullshit.
Yes, it was right at the very beginning of the stream.
What a silly, ridiculous
time.
thing.
So thanks all for turning up. You will see us tomorrow at 4 p.m. UK time, where we are going to be answering any of your questions you might have there as Sotek samples the very best Scottish fare that we can find for him.
So it is also a normal Q&A, so any lore questions or any questions about anything
at all. That literally anything that you fancy asking us, we're there for it, as he attempts to munch his way through some of the sweetest, some of the craziest, some of the bestest foods that the Scottish shops have to offer. I'm looking forward to this a lot. So that's tomorrow at 4 p.m. is much earlier than normal UK time. That is 10 a.m. Central American time, which is quite frankly ridiculous. I may actually. We were discussing this a little bit earlier. So Hawk's asking, since Sotek will be busy, will you do an Ask Me Anything on Sunday? Yeah, I very well may. I'm not decided yet. I've got a little bit of traveling to do on Thursday. And I've got a stream on the Friday, another one on the Saturday. So I might be. I
don't even want whatever that fucking thing is.
Oh, deep fried Mars bar. Can I find one?
Is that like a true Scottish thing, or is that just?
It totally is.
You know, people give us shit for when we deep fry shit at the state fair.
Oh, Scotland's the best. Deep fried Mars bar. Anyway. So, other than that, we will see you tomorrow. Until then, bye, DTAT. Bye-bye.